Okay, ready. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call our council meeting to order. Madam City Manager, can you do a roll call, please?
Be happy to. John Kaposha, Mayor.
Madam Clerk. Oh, here.
Jean Goss, Mayor
Here.
Pro Tem.
Here.
Council members, Rachel Arizmendi.
Present.
Denise Delmar.
Here.
And it looks like John Harabidian is absent.
That is true. Okay, thank you. Let's see. Okay, now we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll be giving the invocation tonight. Okay. Dear God in heaven, thank you once.
Pledge allegiance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're off your game.
Please join me in doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now I'll give the invocation. Dear God in heaven, thank you once again for the blessings that you've bestowed on all of us. We are very thankful to have the good fortune to be citizens of our little village of the foothills. The City Council is truly blessed to be part of a community that is engaged in its own governance. Our citizens are not shy about asking questions, analyzing issues, and voicing opinions. We're blessed to receive such robust feedback, most recently on R1 residential standards, demolition, preservation of historic resources, and now on our budget dilemma. Please help us to carefully consider the feedback given to us by our citizens. Help us to embrace the diversity of opinions, carefully consider the thoughts of those that don't necessarily agree with us, and likewise avoid unfairly favoring those that may be of like mind. Help us to govern in a way that balances competing interests, striving for a result that sustains the community that we love for the present and for the future. And again, dear God, please help us to conduct our deliberations in a positive, purposeful, and productive manner, and guide our judgment in a way that honors our city, our constituents, our democratic traditions and way of life. Amen.
Amen.
Pass that down.
Great job.
Okay. Okay, Madam City Attorney, can you give us a report out from closed session, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The council met in closed session with the city attorney to review a pending matter, the petition regarding the municipal storm sewer 4 permits. Direction was provided to legal counsel, but no action was taken. The council also met in closed session with the city attorney to discuss a matter of potential initiation of litigation. Direction was provided to the city attorney, and no action was taken.
Okay, thank you, Madam City Attorney. Okay, approval of the agenda. Is everybody okay with the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, and one, of course, is absent. Okay, mayor and city council reports. Who would like to
What
start us
about
out?
the minutes?
Oh, approval of the minutes. Man, I am really, don't have it today. I'm sorry. Okay. Should we start over? Okay, approval of the minutes. I mean, yeah, how are you guys okay with the minutes or any changes?
None for me.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? Okay, mayor and city council reports. Who would like to start first?
I'll go first.
Okay,
I have no report today.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll go second. I have no report today.
Boy, I got a report. First, I wanted to just comment on how fantastic that town hall meeting was on Saturday. There are lots of reasons for that. The main reason is the public showed up, and I think that was just wonderful. It was just a tremendous expression of our democratic values, and I just can't tell you how impressed I was with our people. But I want to acknowledge our staff, City Manager Aguilar and all the staff that put that together, and council members Arizmendi and Del Mar to help plan it. I was there along with the mayor and Councilmember Del Mar to help execute it, but it was really about the staff, and they really did a great job. And I really came away with very positive and feelings and some very productive ideas. The other thing I wanted to share was that I was webcasting for Village Vine on. Oh, by the way, Village Vine Online was at that town hall meeting, and they conducted a series of video interviews. They are now up at Village Vine, and they are very well worth seeing. Just go to villagevine.org, and you'll find them. And kudos to Steve Tanner and Susan Henderson and Richard Wortman for putting in the time and getting all that up on the site. I was at the Little League Championship game the other night. I was webcasting for Village Vine, and I had asked Mayor Capocia if he wouldn't join me. And so we had he was kind enough to show up, sat there for 4 innings while we webcasted the game. No politics, no government. All we did is talk baseball. And he got to tell stories and comment on the game, and it was just a real treat. And I know I appreciated it. I know the parents and the kids appreciated it. The mayor was there to see that game. By the way, my son's team won, so I've been on cloud 9 all week. But thank you, John, for coming. It meant a lot to us. That's the end of my report.
I do want to just say that Mayor Pro Tem's son was, 14 for 15 in that
Something
entire?
like that, yeah.
He made 1 out in 4 games and got base hits or otherwise got on base every time. So it's pretty impressive, and I know his dad is extremely proud of him. But it's really good to be back at the field. It's just one of these crown jewels of our city, and everybody around us just loves that ball field. So the only thing I wanted to report on is I did attend the sanitation district meeting, and the board implemented the rate increase that was put forth through the 218 process. And I attended a meeting many, many months ago for former Mayor John Harabedian, and that was the time when they tallied all the votes. And here it is, like about 6 months later, where they finally implemented the rate increase. So that'll be going, but I don't remember what it was, but it was very small. We had only 1 protest out of the city of Sierra Madre at the time. So just for what it's worth, that's happened. So, okay. Okay, now is the time for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. And if you're here to talk about the fire horn or the budget, I would just ask that you hold those comments until later, because those are specific agenda items. So if there's anything else that the public would like to comment on, please come forth and express your thoughts.
I'm Barry Gold, 441 Ramona Avenue. Good evening, Mayor Capocia and council members. Public involvement in city issues.
Can we hold on for just a second, Mr. Gold, until we figure out what the...
Part of what he's doing.
Is that part of your presentation? Is that part of your discussion, the bagpipes?
I'm not sure what you're.
Where is that coming from?
Oh, that.
It's pretty good, bagpipes.
Part of.
Let's hold on for just a second till we
Okay.
find the source of that sound.
No, I understand.
Okay. It appears to have gone away. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Gold.
Public involvement in city issues is the best way of knowing how residents feel. Every aspect of the city's daily activities cannot be, you cannot include public input on them. That would just be too cumbersome. And that is why you were elected to represent us. Some processes, however, are so important that community feedback is vital. Your outreach to the community concerning the budget is an example of that. I believe that the current police contract negotiations is one of the items where public input would be most valuable. Since these negotiations are held behind closed doors, it is difficult for the public to contribute due to the lack of knowledge. With this in mind, I have some thoughts that I hope will be useful. The city has been most generous to the police department over the years. Now that we face a $762,000 deficit next year, it is time for the police department to be understanding and agree to a temporary reduction in wages. The contract being negotiated should be for 1 year only. It is too difficult to know if the voters will approve a tax increase, if one is put on the next April ballot, which, by the way, I oppose. But any additional voter-approved tax revenue will not come in until next May or June, so we still must make cuts for this year. By limiting the contract to 1 year, we are not obligating ourselves to something we cannot sustain beyond the next 12 months. Keeping in mind that the following year the deficit will be over $1 million and that our future revenue is uncertain, contracting for more than 1 year would not be prudent. Finally, I hope that before an agreement with the police department is approved, the public will have a chance to comment on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Would anybody else like to make comments on items that are not on the agenda?
He probably did.
George Meyer, 111 Suffolk. I'm here to talk about the emergency horn.
Okay. Mr. Mauer, we have the emergency horn as a specific item on the agenda, and that is item number 2, actually, right? No. Oh, no, we got the public hearings first. Okay. That's a little bit later. We're going to have, I'm sure, more than a few people talk about that. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, I'll close public comment and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent calendar.
Or do we have a presentation from Bruce?
Do we have a presentation? Oh, we do have. I'm sorry. God, this is a really bad day for,
Oh, God.
I apologize, everybody.
We
Good
don't
evening,
have them.
Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. This is just my monthly conservation update. How is Sierra Madre doing on our efforts to conserve? Again, that's not a photo of Sierra Madre because we would never look like that. Again, rainfall is still well below average, a little over 10 inches for the year versus an average of 25 inches. For May, our conservation was improved by almost 25% over the same period last year. It's great news. Saved almost 18.5 million gallons. And our gallons per capita daily for May was 163, which was slightly improved over April. For this month, the first 8 days, our water use is again approaching 25% over the same period last year. We've saved almost 5 million gallons over the same period last year. But note that our gallons per capita daily has increased slightly, and we would expect this to happen during the warmer summer months when people are irrigating more heavily. Keep in mind that we have a state mandated goal that we're trying to reach. That goal was based on our July to September 2014 average, and we have a conservation goal of 32%. So we have to conserve 32% over what we used in July of 2013, which was 225 gallons per capita daily. That sets our goal, as you see down here at the bottom, for July. Next month, our goal would be 153 gallons per capita daily. We have actually reached that before, but not during summer months. So we've got some real work cut out for us next month. This is a chart that I pulled from the state website. This shows how Sierra Madre compares to the rest of the state. The vertical lines are Sierra Madre's water use versus the The brown line, heavier brown line is statewide use, and the lighter brown line is Southern California. So you can see Sierra Madre's use is a good deal higher than the statewide average. In terms of our aquifer, it has improved by a foot over last month. So that's good news, but it still means that we have a long, long way to go before we can get back to pumping our full adjudication from our wells. And as a reminder for our customers, violators of water day and overwatering restrictions are being cited, fines are being assessed, and penalty charges for exceeding individual customer conservation goals will begin to be assessed next month. So that completes my presentation unless you have any questions.
Just real quick, when we start assessing on those goals, can you give the public a timeline on what will be the first time period that will be assessed?
I believe the time period starts now.
So everybody,
Water use now. Yeah.
you're on the clock right now, in other
You're
words.
on the clock.
But to follow up, I mean, when will a customer, when they receive their next bill, will there be an,
Yes, it will be on their next bill.
okay.
On the July bill,
Mhm,
if they exceeded their use for, would be covering May and June,
mhm.
there will be a penalty on it if they exceeded their conservation target.
Yes, okay. One more question. Now, when you're still continuing to flush our mains through the hydrants,
Yes, we are.
and all the water is going into trucks, right?
We're using the trucks, both our own public works truck and the fire department has graciously consented for us to use their water tender, which has been a real help to public works, being able to capture that much water at one time.
Great. Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask because, so people can just hear that we're not pouring the water into the storm sewer anymore.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's time for the consent calendar. Okay.
You got it.
Nailed that one, huh? Okay, Madam City Manager, can you give us
Correct.
the lowdown on the consent calendar?
It's item A to F. Nothing was pulled for separate consideration this evening. And item A is the adoption of Resolution 1531, approving the city's demands. At 1B is adoption of Resolution 1529, adopting the mid-year budget numbers for the current fiscal year, ending June 30th, 2015. Resolution 15-30, adopting the committed general fund balances for the current fiscal year. At 1C is a recommendation to reject proposals for the library facility condition assessment and to authorize staff to re-advertise the project for professional services proposals, essentially rebidding it. At item D is cancellation of both August city council meetings. At 1C is a resolution, 1532, granting a temporary use permit, number 1505, for the household hazardous waste roundup event, which is being held on August 15th, 2015. And then at 1F is approval of resolution 1527 for the amended and restated Verdugo Fire Communications Service Agreement between the cities of Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena, and Sierra Madre. And in plain language, that's basically the 911 for fire and medical calls. That concludes staff presentation. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, well, let's just go right down the list. Any questions on our warrants? Nope. Okay, how about the mid-year budget update? Just for clarification, again, nothing's changed from
Nothing's
what
changed.
you'd
This is
presented last
exactly
time.
as what was presented to the council 3
Okay.
council meetings ago, more or less.
Okay, item C, the library facility condition assessment. Any questions on that? Okay, does anybody have any on the next one, which is really, really important? Cancellation of both August city council meetings?
Sure.
As we're going through all of our budget and stuff, do we predict that we won't have anything to do in August, that everything will be wrapped up, that we need to have wrapped up by the end of July regarding our
We have no
budget?
way of knowing that. That all depends on the calendar.
Okay. Well, if.
I can't predict that one.
Yeah,
If we need
but
a meeting, we can have a meeting?
we can have a meeting, and if those of us that are out of town, that you can do it via conference call. There's certain conditions that need to be met, and we'll just make sure that those are met. Okay, item E, resolution granting permit for household hazardous waste roundup. We do this every year. It's a great thing. Okay, and item F, the Verdugo. Questions? Okay, I'll open it up for public comment on any item on the consent calendar. Okay, seeing no takers, I'll bring it back to the city council. Any discussion? Nope. Okay, motion.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, none opposed. Okay, number 2 on the agenda, public hearings. This is our fiscal year 2015, 2016 assessment districts, our public hearing and resolution of confirmation. Madam City Manager?
We do have, it's either Director Inman or our city engineer, Kev Tarkudian. I'm not sure which. It is our city engineer.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. This is the annual public hearing for our 8 assessment districts in the city. Those are namely the Downtown Landscape District, Downtown Parking District, 2 sewer districts, the Carter 1 Maintenance Facility District, and the 3 lighting districts. Staff is proposing that the assessment levels remain unchanged for next fiscal year with no increases. And tonight is a public hearing, so staff's recommendation is brief. Open the public hearing, receive input, close the public hearing, and adopt Resolution 15-24 and Resolution 15-33, and allow city staff to submit the assessment to the Los Angeles County Assessor's Office. This concludes my report.
Any questions for our city engineer? Okay, I just want to remind the public that we do this every year, and we went over these exhaustively a couple of years ago, and we took action where we could to and eliminated a couple of districts, but our conclusion is that there's really nothing else we can do, and just leave it the way it is at this point. So at this point, I'll open it up for public I'll open the public hearing and accept input from the public. So anybody would like to speak on the matter? Okay, seeing as none wants to comment on it, I'll close the public hearing. And is there any discussion amongst council on this one? No? Okay, at this point, I just ask that we have a motion to approve 15-24, 15-33, and submit the assessments to the county.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, none opposed? Thank you. Okay, item number 3, conditional use permit to request to allow Verizon Wireless to install a new wireless telecommunications facility.
There is a brief PowerPoint presentation on this one, Mr. Mayor.
Verizon Wireless has submitted an application for a conditional use permit and variance to allow the replacement of an existing 35-foot tall wood Southern California Edison light pole with a new 39.5-foot tall wood pole that will include a stealth wireless telecommunications facility with 1 antenna, 2 radio remote units, and an electrical meter pedestal measuring 4 feet tall to be located adjacent to the base of the pole. This is the vicinity map, As highlighted in the vicinity map, the proposed replacement pole is located approximately 230 feet north of Orange Grove Avenue and positioned along the east side of Oak Meadow Road. According to the municipal code, the wireless facilities located within the public right-of-way requires approval of both a conditional use permit and, in this case, a variance is required for wireless facilities located less than 50 feet from a residential property line. The project is located in the R115 residential, one-family residential zoning district. It does have a general plan designation of residential low density, and the consent to submit the application was granted by City Council on March 24th, 2015. The site plan, as shown here, illustrates both the center line of the street along Orange Grove Avenue and Oak Meadow Road. The placement of the structure, the pole is located 230 feet along the east side of Oak Meadow Road. This is a top view or plan view of the antenna detail. It does show also the existing aperture and light fixture. And it does, on the top of the pole, shows the antenna and the two remote units that you see projecting just to the southeast. This is a north elevation, as you would view this from as you head north on Oak Meadow Road. An elevation if you're standing on Oak Meadow Road and looking directly east. The series of slides that are to follow include various photo simulations, both showing existing and proposed conditions. This view is looking north from Orange Grove, existing on the left, proposed on the right. Looking northwest from Orange Grove, and looking south from Orange Grove, basically looking south on Oak Meadow Road towards Orange Grove Avenue. And northeast from Orange Grove Avenue. The particular series of slides now, as you can see highlighted in green and yellow, are coverage areas or zones of existing wireless facilities. The new facility was just highlighted, and this is as a standalone minus the other coverage. So the purpose of the installation is to improve wireless service and to reduce the existing gap in the cell coverage between Oak Meadow Drive and Sierra Madre, and also on Hacienda Drive in Arcadia. I'm not going to go through a lot of the details of the general CUP findings. They are included in your report. And these are the findings specific to wireless facilities, detailed in your report. And the requirements for location of wireless within the residential zones, again, within 50 feet of a residential property line. I would like to point out item number 3, that the law does require the cities to permit such facilities. Variance findings. Again, staff believes that the variance will be consistent with the objectives of the general plan and the zoning ordinance. The staff recommendation is to approve the conditional use permit 14-07 and variance 15-01 per the recommendation of the Planning Commission pursuant to Resolution 15-28 and the exhibits and report provided by staff. This concludes my presentation. I would like to acknowledge that Aaron Whiting, representing Core Development Services, is also available to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions?
I have a question, Director Gonzalez, and thank you for the presentation. Just to clarify, currently there is not this electrical meter there, correct? And we're going to be installing that next to
The pole, that is true. It's a 4-foot tall meter box and pedestal. So it's 4 feet tall, approximately 21 inches in depth and 24 inches in width.
Okay, thank you.
There will also be two, the applicant has proposed to install two drought-tolerant bushes called toyon, and they would be planted just to the south of that, next to that meter box.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, the Planning Commission unanimously approved this, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
On
okay.
May 7th.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. At this point, I'll open it up for public comment. Does anybody wish to comment on the proposal in front of us? Okay, seeing no comment, we'll bring it back to the council. Any discussion? No, you're okay with it? All right, if everybody's okay, let's have a motion to approve.
I move to approve CUP 14-07 and variance 15-01.
Okay, second? Anybody? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There are none opposed. Okay, thank you. Okay, now items for discussion. Next item on the agenda is consideration of an alternate schedule for testing and use of the emergency horn. Madam City Manager.
Mayor, members of the City Council, Mayor Capocha had requested consideration of this item, and that's the reason it's on your agenda this evening. In approximately January of 2015, the city did begin the daily testing of the emergency horn. That was based upon formal council action that dated back to October 2008. At the time, the horn was inoperable, and it just took us a while to get it fixed, is the reason for the delay between 2008 and the daily testing of it beginning in January of 2015. The council direction was to test it daily at 5:00 p.m. Since that time, we have received concerns about the loudness of the horn and questions about whether or not it needs to be tested daily or what the schedule should be. And ultimately, the city council established a previous testing schedule, and the current council could revise that schedule should it choose to do so. If the horn continues to be used for emergency notification purposes, I should mention the purpose of the horn, it's sort of linked to our emergency radio station, 1630. In the event of an emergency, if there are 3 blasts of the horn, that's the indication for folks to turn to the emergency radio station to get information, current information about what might be happening, that what the emergency is, what the instructions are, any information that's available. The schedule, it could be tested, continued daily, could go once a week, we could go once a month. It's not a very fancy, technologically advanced piece of equipment, so should it be once a month, for example, it would need to be like the 15th of every month, or the 1st, because the 30th, there isn't always the 30th of every month, and it's automated. We don't want to have, staff doesn't have to go and test it every time. It's on a clock. Let's see. Council has a number of options. One of them would be to leave the schedule unchanged. The other one would be to make modifications to the schedule. The council could decide that to discontinue the testing of the horn completely. Council could decide to discontinue the testing but allow the horn to be used in emergencies only. And you can also request additional information and request staff to return to a future meeting. The October 2008 staff report is attached. It gives a bit of history and background on the horn, and at that point, we'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions?
I have some, but I'd like to wait to see what the public has to say first.
Okay, questions?
How do we promote the radio station and the emergency horn? Do we do it on an e-blast or?
When it was first put in place in January, we did a number of e-blasts, press releases. The Kiwanis Club actually printed little stickers. I have to admit, we've gotten busy with many other things, and there hasn't been much publicity on it since.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember, any? Okay, just a couple of questions. One of our residents had sent a little clip from the Lodi Sentinel about our Sierra Madre fire horn. I thought that was interesting that our fire horn made news in Lodi, but at the time, the article said that Ed Tracy had cut the testing back to, I believe, once a month, and this was in 1999. And how, how long was it running at once per month before it finally just went out of service completely? Nobody.
We don't know. I've asked the fire chief. We really don't know. It was in operation for some point in 1999. We can't give you an exact date when it broke.
Okay. What was the original purpose of the horn when it was installed? I do understand that it used to be on our original City Hall fire station before it was moved to the present location.
It was installed originally in the 40s at our old City Hall. The original purpose of the horn is it's the way it was communicated to the volunteer firefighters to report to the fire station that there was a fire or emergency they needed to respond to.
Yeah, so the new use of the horn is something entirely different.
Correct.
Yeah. So, again, I understand that it's going to help us
I will
and,
qualify that. It was actually a little more complicated, sophisticated. It's coming back to be different codes we're using the horn to actually tell the firefighters which part of the city to go to
Yeah.
find the fire.
okay, so.
It was a bit more complicated than just coming to the station.
So then even later on, the firefighters got pagers, and so that just supplemented that. I guess if you didn't hear your pager go off, you might hear the horn go off and you'd know something, so that was useful in that regard. Since then, our firefighters are stationed at the firehouse, right? I mean, so if there's a call that comes in, they dispatch immediately. They don't come from their work location anymore. So the idea now is, just to make sure I understand, the idea is to just alert the citizenry when there is an event in town, and the theory is that they would then tune into to the radio station. Is that?
That's the theory.
That's the theory, okay. Can you tell me what kind of event we would think the horn would be useful? I mean, I'm just thinking, of course, an earthquake. If you feel an earthquake, you know there's an earthquake. The fire doesn't help you there. If there, even during the windstorms, I think there was a comment in the paper that it could have been useful during the windstorm, but when everything was falling down around you, I'm not sure that I would have responded any different to the horn, but that was, that's something.
Yeah, the number one complaint we got during the windstorm is everything is so technology-based now. And there were a number of people who didn't have electricity for quite a few days.
Yeah.
So their cell phones, unless they went in their car and turned on their car, and their cell phones, home phones, TVs, computers didn't work. But generally speaking, everyone either has a radio in their
Yep.
car they can listen to, or a battery-operated radio in their emergency preparedness kits that they could turn to and get information about the latest on the closures, street closures.
So my question is, how would the horn help with that?
Use a windstorm for an example. If we would still get out the information using the electronic means that we have, but we would also blow the horn when we have a message recorded on the emergency radio station that could say, for example, stay off of Baldwin because there's trees blocking it.
Okay.
Here's the alternative path that has already been cleared by city staff to come and go from town. Here's where you can pick up batteries. Here's where you can pick up, you can come to City Hall and charge your phones. Those kinds of messages would be pre-recorded on the emergency radio station. Then we toot the horn 3 times. People could then listen to it and get recent.
So that would be a signal that something new is on the radio that you could listen to. I see. Okay, that's helpful because I didn't quite understand it that way. Okay, so good. Any other questions? Or
What is the decimal level of the horn?
We don't really know.
Okay.
We don't really know because we do have the city does have a decibel reader. The chief, Giannone, and I have been here for 8 years, and it hasn't been tested in the 8 years we've been here. We do use it for code enforcement cases because occasionally somebody will complain that there's a loud party or something. The decibel readings using this uncalibrated piece of equipment, which we believe is somewhat accurate, Underneath the horn, it's about 90 decibels,
Okay.
which is about 10 higher than the 80 decibels. And then as you get further away, when you're at three blocks away, it drops to below 80 decibels. And the further away you get, the lower it gets.
Can I ask a technical question on decibels? Decibel levels, is that a logarithmic scale? I mean,
You're asking,
does anybody know? I mean,
No.
I'm sure
Yeah.
our Director of Public Works, he's a techie, public safety, he's a techie guy, he would, yeah.
That's where the base limits are set, but the actual equipment we use is on a metered scale,
Uh-huh.
and they're pre-calibrated to those 60, 80, 90, decibels. But that's what it is.
So my question is a decibel reading of 90 approximately 10% louder than an 80, or is it?
Correct. That would
It
be
is.
correct.
It's not like an earthquake where the energy is 10 times as much
No,
for every
it would
point
be
up the
10%
scale.
more.
Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, no more questions, and I'll open it for public comment. Who would like to comment on the fire horn?
Mayor and Council, I'd like to comment on the horn to set the record straight.
Before you do, can you introduce
This
yourself? I'm
community
sure
has
everybody
always
knows, but
Needed some type of
he
warning
doesn't
system.
have
A
it.
small town made up basically of volunteers. And we go back many, many years before I moved into the city, but the original signal system was the bell in the Old North Church, which would summons the informal search and rescue team. People would get together to go look for lost hikers in the area. The man who assisted the funeral director lived right close to the bell. The police department would call him. He would run over and ring the bell. The volunteers would assemble and decide which area they were going to head and try and make a rescue. And it was effective. That was the first signaling system, as far as I can tell, for Sierra Madre. This was followed later on. Of course, during the war, we had the siren, the air raid siren. But somewhere along the line, it was decided that it had a more specific system. The system was divided into areas, and they were coded. And the air horn would blow a certain number, and the firemen would head for the fire station, or if they weren't going to make the station, they would head directly to the direction that was indicated. And the police dispatcher, when she got a call, would reach down and pick up a disc about yay big around and put it on the machine, pull the lever down, and it would blow that code. If it was code 12, it would blow 1 and then 2, and blow a series of those. That was the original system to indicate, and it was basically, if you were home, you had a plectron radio that was quiet, had no noise. The police dispatcher would press a button, and it would set a tone, a radio tone, would turn your radio on at home, and the dispatcher would say fire and give the location, so you would know directly to go to the location. Unless you were close to the fire station, you would respond to the fire station. I've had a little experience in my time with the city. I've responded to approximately 5,000 emergency calls, so I've had a little bit of experience with both systems, and during the time as a firefighter and as a medical technician. So, but it was an effective system.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer. Former Mayor George Maurer, for those of you who don't know.
Hi, everybody. I love that bit of history. I love it. That's why I love this city so much. My name is Annalisa Raw, and I am co-owner of Lunch Salon, which is at 65 North Baldwin. My husband and I have owned that salon for almost 14 years now. And before that, I was down the street at the hair upstairs. I was co-owner of that when it was above Sierra Health and Fitness. At that time, it was probably on the once a month schedule, maybe, because we would hear it from down the street, and it was always a bit, like, yeah, there's the horn. But we were down the street, and it didn't seem like it was doing it every day. I don't know, there was no rhythm to it. So based on what you said earlier, I suppose it was just on the once a month thing, maybe. Anyway, then we move up to Lunch Salon, and Lunch Salon resides in a house, so we have a nice big porch in the front, and we often sit out there at lunchtime. 14 years ago, it would sound off at noon, though, lunchtime, not 5 o'clock. So we could be out there, just having lunch or talking with clients, whatever we were doing out there. And, you knew the horn was going to come, but you didn't, you were involved within a conversation. So when that horn rang, well, it didn't just blow. You could feel it. It was like a vibration inside of you. And we would kind of joke about people, that's going to give somebody a heart attack one day, period. It was kind of a joke, but you could see the reactions on people's faces. One day, a coworker of mine and I were out there, and I saw a woman dropping her mom off, and she got out of her car, got her little mother out, put her on the sidewalk, and she said, just stay here, I'm going to go find a parking spot. I think they were going to be in town for lunch. We have a lawn in front of the salon, and we have a small, low wall there. And that horn blasted just as her daughter got back in the van, and the woman, thank God that low wall is there, because she got scared and she kind of went back. So we were out there, we helped her, and anyway, her daughter reparked and just right there in the middle of the street and just got her mom. What was that? What was that? Okay. So that is the day I called here, and I said, you know what? You could have, she seemed okay afterwards. She was very, very scared though. And she was older, okay. But if someday I were to hear that there was a lawsuit because someone fell or actually really did have a heart attack, I would probably be on their side and not the city side. But I am all for nostalgia, but I'm thinking, isn't there something, I have a client, very good client. She has worked for over 24 years at John Tracy Clinic, John Tracy Institute, downtown LA, for Institute for the Deaf. She believes, and not having it being tested, but she believes that because of the short burst that however long it sounds off, she doesn't think it's detrimental to hearing, but she in fact gave me some names, and I have them for you, of acoustical engineers or environmental engineers that will measure that. But I think you just said you had something to measure that sound with, I guess. Anyway, that maybe that there's something, one of these websites I went to, they can actually come and try to help you diminish a sound or something. They could at least assess that. So if you would like that number, I could give that to you.
I'm not sure that's really going to help in this discussion, but I mean,
Okay.
if you can just hand it to our city clerk and we'll put it in the record, and
Okay.
if we need it, we'll.
And then the very last thing is, I didn't know how to really put it up on anything, but I do have a video that was taken by our employee just 3 weeks ago of a family. You can see a family, and it's kind of, I hate to make this sound like we're sitting there watching for people to fall, because we're not.
Just if you could, can you please?
Just saying, I have a video of a family walking by
Yeah.
down the street. The boy falls. The parents are afraid. I mean, it just,
Yeah.
So I have that, if you
Thank you.
wanted to see that.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you very much. Okay.
Hi, Barbara Lee Klein. Born and raised in Sierra Madre. I, for one, I love that fire horn. And I think we're real fortunate to still have George Maurer, one of our original ambulance person here in town, and first EMT, and a wealth of knowledge. And I hope that the city takes advantage of his memory and records everything that he has knowledge of, especially for the fire horn. I used the fire horn as a child to realize it was time for dinner. 5 o'clock, time to head home. Also noontime when I'm out gardening. Oh God, okay, great, I've lost track of time. I think the original location is what's missing here. I would love to see the fire horn move back into Kirsten Court and have a plaque dedicated to the fire horn. It meets everything that the historical markers require to be here in Sierra Madre. It used to be up on a tall pole, and the sound hit the mountainside and reverberated back across the town. And I think when it was moved, that's what has caused all the chaos. So let's put it back into what I still consider Kirsten Court historical, but we haven't designated as yet, along with the pepper trees. I would like to have this piece of Sierra Madre not chipped away and not done away with, but to be kept and to be noted that we're a unique town, and this is just part of what we have in its uniqueness, that we have the first communication system ever devised here in California, and we're very fortunate and lucky to have it. I think the placement just needs to be put back in the original spot, and no one complained then. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name's Paul Hovsepian, and I live up on Mountain Trail. And when the horn goes off, the one good thing about it is that I know it's 5 o'clock. But it is very startling, and I can imagine how disturbing it must be to those people downtown who are living close to it or who do not expect it to happen, like the lady was talking about. It seems to have it be every day is just extreme and unnecessary. And I think it's something, since you want to test to see if it works, just test it once a month, and then people know that's going to, that other than that, I think it's, like I said, it's just, it's a nuisance.
Okay, thank you. Who else?
I'd like to answer some of the questions that have been brought up here tonight.
Okay, Mr. Maurer, if I can interrupt you, is maybe at the end we'll ask you to come back and answer questions, okay? I mean, as a former mayor, I know that
This, is really looking at.
we're going
an
to,
upside.
I'll give you an opportunity to speak again. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Glenn Putnam. I live on 630 Oak Crest. And I'd like to bring up a former Sierra Madre citizen who was very much in favor of the bell, of the horn, and that was Father Gara. I don't know if everybody remembers him, but Father Gara was a very special person here in Sierra Madre, and he used to go around town saying, or wearing a T-shirt that said, "Save the horn, blow me daily."
Thank you.
Caroline Brown, Alta Vista Drive. I would like to take a little bit of the heat off of George Maurer here because I was very much involved in the second phasing in of the use of the horn for emergency purposes as a member of Sierra Madre's Fire Safe Council and a member of the Southern California chapter of the American Society of Foresters. We had a meeting in Montecito, just outside of Santa Barbara, just after the Tea Fire. Now, the Tea Fire started way up on a ridge line and pushed all the way down to the city limits of Santa Barbara. And a group of students were trapped in a school setting, and there was no way to alert parents or anybody as to how to access those students. And when we had our forestry meeting there, it was interesting. They brought up the topic of wanting to go back to the simple technology of a fire horn and an AM radio. And I had the pleasure of raising my hand and saying Sierra Madre was in the process of working on that right then and there. Last summer, I was traveling through northern Tennessee. Where was I? Somewhere back there. And after our dinner at the barbecue joint, we're getting back on the road going down, and we're seeing these signs that say evacuation route. And I'm going, evacuation route? Well, I know that's important. What on earth would I need to be evacuating from? And it was the Tennessee Valley Authority nuclear power plants. So you're in different parts of the country at different places in your life, and you need to be educated about what you're having to face as an emergency. I think this discussion tonight is absolutely perfect because it gets this out in front of the public. Changing it to test it a different sequence is reasonable to look at that and see if that works. This particular horn with its power system, the blower, would not blast that horn for 3 minutes straight, but that's what we would be hearing if we lived in tornado country. Once a month, 3 minutes straight, tornado country. I asked I have on my cell phone, my little NOAA weather app, and I asked my son this summer when I'm on my way to Missouri, what should I do in terms of looking at my NOAA weather app? And he said, if all the people are driving that way, turn around and follow them. Okay? So it's the practical of it all, is what it is. During the San Diego firestorms of 2003 and 2005, they found that the reverse 911 failed people because they were away from home. They couldn't get those messages through to them. And I looked just now on the Santa Barbara Sheriff's information on phone cell registration and alerts to reverse 911, and here was the question: will my telephone get called if the power goes out? If your telephone is corded, meaning the plain old phone that goes in the phone jack in the wall, you'll have a telephone, unless that local pole to you burns down. If you have a cordless phone, it will work as long as the base unit has a battery or power backup. If you're using a cell phone, your cell tower may be affected, which I want to point out most recently how the cell towers were affected here in Southern California. 2014, there was a 5.1 earthquake and a 4.1 aftershock in Rowland Heights at the fourth hole of the golf course. And the callers overloaded the system by calling, "Did you feel the earthquake? Did you feel the earthquake?" And it overloaded the system. So we know here, no one needs the horn to tell you there was an earthquake. No one needs the horn to tell you to look up on the hillsides. You can smell the chaparral burning. But what it does is alert you to go to 1630 on your radio dial and repeatedly listen for information as it will be changing. So if anything now is missing in our plan, it's as our city manager said, you start off with good information and you get sidetracked and you need to keep the information going. I taught public health and safety in high school, and I think this is another reason why the people that set about getting actually all the downtown businesses to help, they put out pots of places where people could donate money, and we raised the money to put up the radio tower and kind of search the countryside for the repairs that the compressor needed. The 3 blasts have to be loud. I mean, being loud is part of the deal here. That's the hard part of it. And right now it's a short stab, depending on where you are around town. It's, if it meets the decibel readings, it's hard to say for sure. There was someone that thought maybe we could go to just normal siren, like the engines that the fire department has. You want it to be different. And if it's blast once a day, no matter what time you decide to blast it, if it's blast once a week or once a month, no matter what time you decide to do it or how often you decide to do it, when it's blasting 3 times in a row and it's at 2 a.m., people will know it's not a test.
Thank you. Okay, other comments?
My name's Bill Coburn. I live on Lima. I understand that the system that we have is an old system and it's a very simple system, but I'm curious as I sit here, I'm wondering, is there not a way to make it so that it could have two levels of sound? One that is quieter to do the testing and one that's loud when there's an emergency? Seems like a simple solution. It just can't be done. Then maybe we should look at another system that can do that.
We'll answer the question when we have all the comments, but it's a good question. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Name is Gary Hood, live at 465 North Baldwin. I think this is really great to see such a good turnout because this is a great opportunity to alert people about the emergency radio station we have. Yep, maybe once a day is too much and we need to consider once a week, once a month, but the important thing is that we are reminding people that we have an emergency radio station. And some of the radio station functions would be if you have a flood up there, you can direct people to which streets to take. If there's wind and you can direct people away from streets where there are downed wires. There are so many things that you can do to educate the community to do a safe evacuation. I think we're lucky to have the fire horn and the emergency radio station. The discussion was on sound. On a fire apparatus and a police vehicle, the sirens generate between 110 and 123 decibels. Workers are not supposed to be exposed to more than 85 decibels at 10 feet. These measurements are usually at 10 feet. So a worker is not supposed to be exposed to 85 decibels for a extended period of time. I don't know what that is. I wanted to say 8 hours, but the gardeners with their blowers, they're all rated, I believe, under 80 decibels. So yes, the sound is a concern, and I think that we could reevaluate and try to find a suitable time. We don't need to be scaring the people coming from out of town to eat food here or visit family, but the radio station and the horn are good for the community. Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Seeing as there's no other speakers, I'll bring it back to council. So, do you want me to go first since I put it on?
No, I was wondering if we had any questions that public comment.
Oh, there were, yes.
that could be answered.
Yes, Mr. Coburn asked, could it have two different levels of sound?
Not really. It is I'll say it's old. It's air operated, and it needs a certain amount of air and pressure for it to blow, and if you don't have enough air, it just gives off a very strange noise.
Or
That
you-
isn't very loud at all.
Yeah.
And so it just isn't that sophisticated a piece of equipment.
That's what I thought.
Follow up to that, what about Barbara Lee's question about moving it to Kirsten Court?
The horn can be moved. It requires a hollow pole to get the air up to it. There's a compressor, there's a backup generator. So there's some equipment that would need to
So
be
that would all
moved.
be out in the open there?
And we'd have to secure it so that it's not,
There's an enclosure.
there's an enclosure on it. You can see it there now if you look for it. But we can move the equipment and install a pole and put it just about anywhere. We need electricity.
Yeah.
Do we have any reason to believe that it would have less of an effect on people?
No, we don't.
If we moved it there?
No.
Could have
It-
more.
It could have more.
It could affect people
It'll
different
affect different people differently. I mean, it'll be louder for the folks closer to there, and
I'm not familiar as to where it was originally posted. Where in Kirsten Court was it?
I don't know.
We have a citizen who is knowledgeable.
Oh, it was.
I know it was on the old city hall. I was not aware that it had ever been in Kirsten Court.
Is it okay? if
Somebody said
Ms.
it
Lee
was,
answers
so.
the question? I'm curious. I just don't.
If you have the Just a three-word answer to that
The
question.
most knowledgeable man right here is Mr. Mauer.
Okay.
I remember growing up, also the original fire station, but I remember Kirsting Court, I could be wrong, but I remember it up on the pole so that the sound echoed off the mountain, not into the town, so that all the town could hear the horn, not just
Yeah.
downtown.
It's still,
that's what I think
it's
the
still
problem is.
pointed north.
So it was
The horn
high.
is
North,
pointed
but it
north.
reverberates against the mountainside.
So it had to be really high, right? to-
Yeah, yeah, and no one in all my years of growing up ever complained about the fire horn. Nobody, everybody loved it because you knew exactly what time it was.
But it would be out there by the benches, near the park benches, or?
I think this is a good spot to pick, and then rededicate it and add a plaque.
If I can just facilitate here, I really don't think this is not really the question. I mean, we can decide that a different time. I think really the question is, how often are we gonna test it? So maybe we should just kind
No,
of stay
sure,
with that
absolutely. I
for
was
right
just
now.
curious as to where it was.
Okay.
Oh,
All
wait.
right. Go ahead, tell us where the horn was.
Curious as to where the horn was.
It was put on the old city hall in 1940, and when they sold the building, they moved it over to on Montecito there.
Okay,
And it's just always been pointed to.
thank you.
Yes, okay. Okay, other questions or other comments? I mean, folks have any thoughts of, I wanted to give former Mayor Mauer another chance to just comment. If you'd like to come up quickly.
I would like to remind the council that the horn is a mechanical equipment. And not too long ago, just a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, when they were testing the horn, it would not blow. It was overpressurized, wouldn't work. And if you're not going to test that thing every day, how long will it go inoperational before we discover that it's needed and it's not working? Dependability is 90% of prevention. And, the horn was originally in the hose tower at the old station, moved down at the corner because the new fire station was across the street from the hospital. And so that was why it was relocated downtown. But,
Can I ask a question? Yeah.
Sure.
Reliability is the whole thing in a nutshell.
Mr. Mauer, question for you real quick. Would you, if we went to once a week, do you think that would compromise the dependability of the system?
Luckily, the air tank holds enough to blow it 3 times. So in case the electricity isn't working, there is enough there for emergency service. And it upsets me, like I say, because people talk about emergencies and then they say, oh, not in Sierra Madre. I've got news for them.
Yeah.
There is some real hairy situations in Sierra Madre that people are not cognizant of. I'd rather not talk about some of them. But, look at Ted Willis, who was the owner of the property north of Carter, who was a geological engineer. And he pointed out that there is a fault that starts on his property, goes down under the Catholic Church, and just 50 feet south of the Catholic Church is this enormous pipeline that's carrying MWD water that is bypassed in that location by one fault. There's another fault on Sunnyside that passes that enormous line. So if
The horn will alert us to turn on the radio, so
we've had earthquakes. The house at the corner of Sunnyside and Grandview, which is close to where that water line shifted.
Okay, Mr. Mauer, thank you.
Earthquake. So,
Thank you very much.
If you think it can't happen, you better give it another thought.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so how often should we test the horn?
I'll be happy to start at least with some thought. Quick personal story. I went to graduate school in Charleston, Illinois, which is about 3 hours south of Chicago. And the first time I heard a siren, tornado siren, I about fell over. But let me tell you, that was an emergency, and we had to hunker down and go down into the basement. So I can appreciate that we don't have to deal with tornadoes, but at the same time can appreciate the importance of an emergency system. And I also work with 211, for those of you that do not know that, but it is a system where we're working on the emergency response, disaster response side of it, and how to coordinate communication efforts. And so understanding what we're doing nationally to do that work and what we're doing as a state and as a county, I can appreciate how important that is also for our city. And I have nostalgia for this horn, even though I have not lived here, as many of you have and grew up. I kind of like the horn. I get a little giggle out of it, even though it's not supposed to be for giggling and it's supposed to be for emergency purposes. But aside from the nostalgia, I can appreciate the importance of it and the intent of it, and really streamlining communication. Thank goodness we haven't had to deal with extreme situations aside from the wind since I've lived here. But there are a lot of things we just haven't anticipated yet or can't anticipate, and I think we'll be thankful we have a different mode of communication aside from everything that we depend on now with phones and internet and so forth. But even with those, we don't have specific information for Sierra Madre. So I think we should continue using the fire horn, but I can also see the reason not to do it on a daily basis. I would like to see it once a week, but if, depending on where all of you here are, I can even consider once a month. But there's something about being consistent with it and recognizing that sound and knowing that when it is different, as some of the people in the public here have commented today, I think that will help us alert us to a higher level of understanding that we need to, go to the radio station. I think we need to do a better job at communicating. I did not know, I can honestly say, that it was 1630 that I had to tune into. So I think if whatever we decide to do and the frequency of it, we need to do a better job of communicating out to the public the reason we do it and what to do thereafter once it is three quick horns to notify us of an emergency. So I'd be okay with a weekly basis, but I will consider every month if we need to.
Well, for some of you know that I grew up in Oklahoma, so I'm so used to those tornado sirens, and we tested them every Wednesday at noon. That's when the tornado siren went out. But the siren is different than a horn blast, because the siren kind of starts out low and then it gets high, so it's not that blast to the ears that the horn does. However, I've lived in towns where they did have horns, and those were around the chemical plants. One of the things I didn't hear about emergencies is we are by a freeway, and there is a good chance that we could have a truck go over with the chemical and the cloud comes in. So you always have to be aware of that. I also live 2 blocks from the horn. So not only do I hear the horn every night at 5, I feel the horn every night at 5. And my dogs are often on a walk on Montecito at 5 o'clock at night, and they do get scared. So I have a couple questions. One, I've heard about the height difference. So I'm wondering if it was higher up, if it would lessen the sound to right there in downtown. And I would like to know for sure that it is only at that 80 decimal, because once you get a little higher, it does do damage to the people's ears, and the woman who was from the lunch salon and the workers down there. I would be willing, I would prefer to do it on once a week. Perhaps because it's downtown, we don't want to do it at a really busy time, like 5 o'clock when everybody's trying to go to the restaurants, so maybe a less busy time downtown. But I would like to see it once a week, and like a Wednesdays at noon or Fridays at 5. Fridays at 5 would kind of be nice. It's the end of the week. Let you know, weekend started, so that's where I am with that.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Goss.
I agree with pretty much everything I'm hearing. I'm very, very much persuaded that this is a necessary part of our emergency preparedness. There's no doubt in my mind we need something mechanical and not, excuse me, based on the electrical grid. I'm concerned when I hear our expert tell us that he's not sure, or maybe I didn't hear that right, but if we are testing this thing less frequently, that the probability of it working drops. I don't see any purpose in having an emergency preparedness tool if we have some doubt about its efficacy. So I would like to have more assurance that it's actually going to work. If I'm all for once a week, but if I have reason to believe that it won't work, or there's a good chance it might not work, I would rather keep it on a daily basis. But if we could move it up to a higher level and direct it in a different direction, maybe experiment a little bit with that and try to mitigate as much of the problems we're hearing, I think that would be useful. So I could throw my vote in for once a week, but only if we know it's going to work. I haven't really heard anybody tell me they know.
Hey, well, if I can suggest this, sounds like once a week. I mean, I was thinking once a week or once a month, but that's a pretty good argument to say that we maybe shouldn't go right to once a month because we don't know whether anything is malfunctioning in the whole month. So can I maybe make a suggestion, and I'd be in favor of once a week, and then let's revisit the issue in 1 year and tell us how much maintenance was required on it and whether there were any instances where it failed to go off in in that 1 week interval. And, any other, and just log the complaints that come in as well, and let's take a look at, then maybe consider some of the other measures, like perhaps moving it or raising it higher. I really, this is just my opinion, but I really don't want to bother staff with looking at these various options about locating it. It's from what I can see, it's a pretty delicate thing, and it's a hollow pole, if I'm not mistaken, and raising it up could change the engineering of it, so that would just open up a whole new can of worms there. So is that acceptable?
I just want to, I like the idea of once a week, but to modify that if we are experiencing that it's not working.
You can ask to
just
put it
let-
on the agenda.
Yeah, well, just to let us know, to communicate back to us, and then, right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, we good with that?
I'd be able to tell you because I'm right
We'll
there.
just ask Councilmember Delmar to give us a report.
Okay, so if we're all good with once a week, and well, I'd like to keep the 5 PM at Friday. I think
Friday
that's
sounds great.
I've heard from a few people that they were, that was an acceptable time.
I think that also allows too, I was always thinking about the folks that are maybe not home on during the weekday, but I think Friday at 5, we can catch some of them, and,
Yeah.
it's a good time.
And I would like to suggest also that we have to communicate better about what it's for. I've asked a few people, what are you going to do when you hear those 3 blasts? And the 3 people I just asked randomly, none of them knew that they should tune on to the station. So,
We can pick up the PR again.
Even if it's every e-blast that goes out, perhaps we can ask the paper to put it, just a little thing every week so they know 3 blasts
Reminder.
means 16:30.
Good idea.
okay, so our staff has sufficient direction.
It would be good, I know it seems kind of silly, but if we could have a motion and a second and a vote, that would be great. Just so we have it in our minutes for
Good,
5 years from now when we're talking about it again.
okay.
We don't want to take responsibility for it. That's
Okay,
why.
I'll make the motion to change the fire horn testing to once per week and revisit it in 1 year and examine the maintenance of the horn and also the number of complaints that have come in. And I think Captain Haydorf has a comment to make here.
No, I just want to say it's probably going to take about a week to get it changed because
Yeah.
Post Alarm does it as a volunteer
Oh,
for
okay.
us, so.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Well, I'll second with the friendly amendment, but again, just to make sure that if it is malfunctioning, to notify us, and not just to wait a year to revisit. So I'll second it.
Okay.
That friendly amendment, if that's okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Okay, Madam City Manager, let's get down to the tough stuff. Budget reduction alternatives, contracting and service level reductions.
Mayor, members of the City Council, at your last meeting, you reviewed a staff report where staff had presented a number of possible budget reductions. We aimed for 3 different levels of reductions for each of the city departments, a level 1, 2, and 3. The council reviewed those budget reductions. You also reviewed the very preliminary, call it 60,000 foot level contracting proposals that we were able to obtain. At the conclusion of the council's discussion, you decided to wait until after the June 6th community input meeting, town hall, to make any decisions regarding budget reductions. You also decided at the last council meeting to form subcommittees to evaluate the police services bid, the library contract proposal, I should say, the police contract proposal, the library contract proposal, and to form a committee for a revenue exploratory committee is what you called it. But those committees weren't actually formed at the last council meeting. Again, you wanted to wait to get this last round of community input from the public. I do have a few slides of what happened on June 6th, if you'd like me to go through them. Jinx. We estimate attendance at about, conservatively, believe it or not, at $250, 250 attendees. 250 attendees. Some folks thought there were more, but I think that's a good conservative number. We received written comments from approximately 130 individuals who attended on Saturday, so not everyone who attended left their written comments with us. We received 97 budget reduction worksheets from individuals, and then we received 138 revenue surveys where residents had completed their thoughts on revenues. So altogether, we estimate about a 55% participation rate of those folks in attendance. Jumping right into the budget reduction worksheets, the attendees were asked to recommend $1 million in reductions, and what was interesting, we received 97 responses or worksheets, and 48, which is almost exactly half, did not recommend any reductions. The comments that we received on the worksheet were, this is too difficult, I can't decide, or I don't want the city to make any cuts, or bring back the UUT, or bring back revenues. We did get 49 where individuals did identify budget reductions, but only 14 actually identified $1 million in cuts. The other 35 did not reach the full $1 million. We've attempted to summarize, so this is just 49. Of the 49 that submitted reduction recommendations, the way to read this, and I'll use the pointer here, 16, and these are 16 individual comments. There were 3 that ended up with the most comments, the most indications from these 49 of reductions. These 16 are administration, the cuts to administration, the reductions to the police department, and reductions to the library. And then the next level were 2 at 14 comments received, and that would be the fire department and the planning department. And then 13 comments were received for community services, and 11 comments received regarding reductions in public works. So again, it was administration, police, library, fire, planning, community services, and then public works. Then we look back to see which level. As I mentioned earlier, we presented the public the same level 1, 2, and 3 budget reductions that we'd presented to the council the week earlier. And so this is where we broke down how many which levels received the most votes, for lack of a better term. The one that got the most votes was, with 23, was administration cuts at level 3, which 3 is the largest dollar reduction. 1 is the least dollar reduction. So admin level 3 got 23, followed by planning level 3 at 19, library level 1 at 17, public works level 3 at 17, fire level 2 at 15, Community Services, level 3 at 13. Police, level 3 at 13. Contracting, it was a tie between level 3 and police contracting out the sheriff's department. Both of those received 13. And then administration, level 2, got 12 votes, and community services, level 1, received 12 votes. So that's just a ranking, just the straight number of people who identified level 1, 2, or 3, and which one garnered the most votes. Going next to the revenue, there was a station where the participants were asked to fill out a little form. The first choice they had on the form was to check a box that said no new or increased revenues. And then beneath that, check a box, there was a number of boxes for fees that they might be interested in increasing, and then assessments, and then the utility users tax. That was the order that the sheet was typed out for the public to give their input. No, we received 138 revenue worksheets. We received 7 responses, or 5%, that were no. They checked the box, no new or increased revenues. So 7 of 38, or 5%. 131 of the responses, or 95%, identified at least one or more new or increased revenue. So it was 7 people said no new increased or new revenues. 131 identified at least one new or an increased revenue, and we'll tell you where those 131 fell in just a moment. Of the 131 responses, the way this breaks down is we had, of the 131, which are all the people that identified at least one or more revenues, 6 individuals came up with their ideas of their own. One of them was a high-end auto dealer in town, like Tesla and Aston Martin were the ones they recommended. Another one said to go to Sacramento and lobby the state so they would return more of our property taxes to us. So 6 people identified an idea that wasn't on the form to check from. 19 folks identified either fees, but did not identify the UUT. They identified other fees, whether it was parking citations, overnight parking, fire department response fee, 19. And then 14 respondents only checked off they were interested in increasing the UUT. Didn't identify any other revenues at all, just checked off the increase the UUT box. 92 folks checked off the UUT along with fees and assessments. So 92 folks sort of checked everything. They said, council, consider everything. Breaking down the UUT responses, if you take the 14 and the 92, that's 106. So just looking at these 2 boxes here who indicated the UUT, we asked respondents whether it was a 12% they were interested in or the 10% UUT rate, almost in half. 57, but slightly more, 12% UUT at 57%, and 43 of the respondents at a 10% UUT rate. And that's it.
And can I just add, the reason that we had those different revenues was because that's what we heard from the different input meetings that we had gone through, with the 10 of them. Those were the revenues that were suggested to us throughout that process, right?
Exactly. So at this point, there's the May 26 staff report has been included as an attachment because it does list all of the level 1, 2, and 3 budget reductions. The council can this evening give staff direction on budget reductions. Also included in your packet is our fee study, our list of fees, and the staff has identified, again, based on the input and just based upon conversations we've had previously with the council, some fees you may want to evaluate a little closer. In particular, the planning department fee to get to closer to 100% fee recovery. We're not there yet. The detailed fees, if there's no percentage next to them, it means we're at 100%. If we're less than 100%, there's a percentage in the fee schedule, 70%, 43%. That's how you read the fee schedule. There are 2 new fees we would like to add to the fee schedule. One of them is for MPDES, illicit discharge response fee of $213. That's when somebody discharges something they're not supposed to discharge into the storm drain. That's based upon a total response time by staff of 1.5 hours, which is about the average it takes us to respond to those types of call. And then secondly, there are 2 permits in the planning section. Actually, it's in Public Works, but it's related to planning. Grading plan checks and grading inspection deposits. When the fee schedule was done, those fees are based on actual costs, but there was no deposit identified. So we as staff would come up with an estimate of how much somebody should deposit before they get their grading plan check and the grading inspection, but it's always a bit of an argument because there was nothing stated that this is the deposit and we charge against it. If we end up spending less, you get a refund. If it ends up costing us more, you give us more of a deposit. So to simplify things, we're recommending an initial deposit for both of those, and deposits throughout the fee schedule, wherever you see deposits, it means it's a deposit against the actual cost. So if it ends up, we spend less staff time, they get a refund. If it takes more staff time, then they have to give us an additional deposit. In the police department, minor changes. There's an outside court subpoena fee. You really don't need to look at these because it's a lot of pages. Just want to bring it to your attention. This fee is set by the state. Our recommendation is to remove the dollar amount that's in the fee schedule because we don't set it anyways, the state does. There were 3 areas where the council may want to look at increasing, 2 areas where you may want to look at possibly increasing fees. One of them is our annual overnight parking permit fee and then parking citations. And then the third area under the police department is a new fee. We do not currently charge for overnight parking in city parking lots. It's something that has been on staff reports for a number of years now, but we bring it up because it is an option that the council has. Lastly, the fire department has a fee. We're calling it a response or dispatch fee. This would be currently if the paramedics respond and someone is transported to the hospital, they do receive a bill for that. But if the fire department responds and it doesn't result in a transport, then there is no bill to send the resident, the person requesting the service. The staff report just gives a recommendation of $72, and that is based upon our dispatch fee. That is what Verdugo charges us to respond. When they take the call, they charge us $72 a call. That's where that fee came from, so we could recoup that cost. Or alternatively, staff could calculate a higher fee if you wanted to base it upon average staff time and the equipment involved in the overhead. It could be a higher fee. The last thing is there's just a tiny error in the fee schedule that was given. Our administrative citation fees and our false alarm fees are actually set by the municipal code. When staff did the CPI increase, which was 0.5% for the last year, the schedule at this point in time only increases our current fees by 0.5% because that was the CPI, and that's what we're authorized to increase fees by pursuant to your fee policy. Admin fees and false alarm fees are set by an ordinance, so they shouldn't have been in here. They accidentally got increased by the CPI, so we'll correct that. I want to emphasize that this evening the council isn't approving our fee schedule this evening. You're not even approving the budget this evening. You're providing direction so that staff can schedule a public hearing for you to actually do your formal adoption at a future meeting whenever that may occur. And that is it at this point. We'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Before we get to questions, I mean, how does the council want to just organize our recommendations? I mean, do we want to talk about what we heard on the June 6th or other feedback? You know, we've got just a lot of things we need to give direction on, so I'm kind of at a loss as to just how to get this organized in a really, efficient manner.
I would like to begin by discussing the need for subcommittees.
Okay, that's a good one.
See if we have some consensus on that first.
Okay. So we can, I was just thinking also on the fees, you've given us some options, so even though we wouldn't be adopting, we could kind of look at these and tell you kind of where we want to go so that you'd
Correct.
have it in the actual public hearing, right?
And the fees are important. If there is an increase in fees, that's an increase in revenue, so our numbers will change just slightly. I mean, none of these fees are going to bring in a lot of money,
Yeah.
but we will adjust the numbers in the budget document to reflect your
Yeah.
decision on fees.
Well, the other thing aside from committees, what we really need to do is give the city manager direction on how much we're willing to subsidize out of the general fund going forward. Where are we going to cut services and how deeply are we going to cut? And, the impact on what we spend out of reserves for the upcoming year. So, I mean, really, I think that's the biggest part of it, but maybe we can sort of ease into that by talking about some of the other things, the fees and first.
And I think you covered it. I had it in 4 chunks, if you want to think
Okay,
about
good.
that way. One is the committees, whether it's the contract subcommittee and any other committees that we want to consider. The fees, as you discussed, and maybe direction on that. And then thirdly, I had giving some specific direction in the 15-16 year, and I think you can tie that into the subsidy for general fund / direction and carrying over
Yeah.
current year into the upcoming year. And then the 4th chunk was exploring the revenue sources, and maybe
Okay.
that also could be under subcommittees, I'm not sure.
I thought it
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
maybe 3
Okay,
chunks is
all
what I
right,
was thinking of.
good. Okay, so with that, let's proceed with any questions for staff. We've all been saturated with budget, so I really don't have any questions. Yes, oh, absolutely.
I'll start with the subcommittees. I think we have to do the subcommittees for both of the contracts, for the sheriff and for the library, just so we have our due diligence done. It may show that, for once and for all, that the sheriff's contract will not save us a dime, so we know that going
Yeah.
in, so we don't have to keep putting that in our mind, and the same thing with the library. So I think due diligence needs to be done for both those contracts, and I also think we need a committee for possible revenues, and I would strongly urge that we make sure that we have someone from the library and from the police department and on those committees as well.
Okay, well, we'll just explore that when we bring it back to council. In the meantime, you ready for me to open it up for public comment?
I do have a quick question, since we're going to be talking about fees at some point, but can you share a little bit more about ICC rates and what that is?
When it comes to planning fees for constructing doing construction, plan check fees, a little tongue-tied. When it comes to plan check fees are based upon the valuation of the project being constructed. Sierra Madre has always, we don't know why, we are using a rate that probably goes back
1998?
to 1998, and it's never been updated. Staff is recommending we go with the ICC, which is the International Code Council. They develop rates twice a year. I'll give you an example. New construction, we value things at $79.20. ICC is $112.65. LA County also puts out a rate that a lot of cities use to evaluate their projects at. Theirs is higher at $134.40. We wouldn't recommend going that high. We recommend going with the ICC rate just to get it up to date. Technically speaking, the building official has the authority to set the building valuation rates, but we have a contract building official, and I would like to emphasize the contract building official to Wildan. Wildan will not at all receive any revenues from this change because Wildan does our commercial plan check. We have a different contractor who does the residential plan check. This only pertains to the residential plan check.
Okay.
Evidently, we've always used ICC for the commercial side of things, but we've used this $79 rate for the commercial side of things.
Interesting.
But I didn't, it's nothing that we need, the fee study doesn't change. How it's calculated stays the same. It's just the valuations would change. So we would recommend for transparency purposes, at the bottom of the plan check page of fees, saying building valuations are based upon the ICC for commercial and residential projects.
For both, okay.
That's it. It's for transparency purposes.
But it is interesting that for commercial, we've been using the ICC
Always.
rates, and for residential, we've been using our own rates. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good question. Okay. All right, so I'll go ahead and open up public comment. Would anybody from the public like to comment on our budget? Can I just ask also in advance as to, please, we're not going to put the timer, or we are. You've got the timer on? I don't really like to cut people off, but please do your best to keep it within 3 minutes. I think it helps with our attention span, or especially mine, that if you go on a little bit too long, you kind of lose your message. So please do your best to just be concise with your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It'll help me keep my thoughts short for sure. My name is Steve Stapenhorst. I live at 442 Teresa Lane. I've been in town for 21 years, and I think you guys have a terrible job. You guys and you women have a terrible job in front of you. Having gone to the town hall on Saturday, looking at the possible cuts, I couldn't possibly vote to make any of those cuts. We have a town that's built on the things that are now going to be cut. On public services, on safety services, on activities and values for our children, on library services for those who need it, even if we all don't. We once had a swimming pool that served the community in a wonderful way. Because of budget cuts, it became a non-community pool run by a private corporation for their profit. We came to town, I didn't even have children then. We had them, they've used the services, but we all need to be responsible for the values of our community, which go beyond just our property values, which are propped up by the value of the services in our community. We need to value the things that other people see as important. We need to look at the whole picture of Sierra Madre. What is the quality of life here? And what does it cost? There are occasional times in life when you get more than you pay for. For example, our volunteer fire department. We do. We get more than we pay for. Look at the results of the volunteer fire department. Look at the charts that you showed us on June 6th. But that's very rare in this life. And by and large, you get exactly what you pay for. And if the citizens of Sierra Madre are not willing to pay, it's going to be less and less of a community. So I'm going to abdicate my responsibility on commenting on the budget cuts you need to do and jump to the fact that you really need to get a UUT back in front of the public as soon as possible. And those of us who believe in it will help you promote it, will help you tell the public, not that they should, but just point out the value we have in the community and say, you do get what you pay for. Do you want this community, or do you want another community which is not nearly as good? So I encourage you to do that as soon as possible. I feel very bad for you in your coming meetings, really do. And when I filled out that form, I couldn't possibly help. I'm sorry, I tried.
Thank you.
I need Steve's last name.
Stapenhorst.
What is it?
Stapenhorst.
Thank you.
Hi, I would echo a lot of what he said. I'm Steve Syverson. I live on Montecito. I'm a recent immigrant. My folks lived here for about 30 years, and we're living in their house currently. Moved back here to Southern California from Wisconsin. First of all, kudos to you on the program on Saturday. That was well organized, and it did a lot to point out just how challenging your task is. One of the things that really struck me about it was the listing of the per capita sales tax that you receive. And because of the quaint little nature of downtown, and you don't have any big box stores and things like that, it was like $25 a person here, and some of the other cities were $100+ and that difference would account for your $1 million just by itself. So I think we need to annex the top end of the mall. Okay? Get that to be part of Sierra Madre. Seriously, I do advocate for the UUT. I think that the part of what that sales tax drove home to me is here was a source of revenue that neighboring cities have in a much larger degree than we have. And as he just said, if you want this kind of community, if you want to preserve this kind of life, you need to be willing to step up to the plate and pay for it. And so I would advocate the UUT tax. I also don't know if this is possible in California, but I know in Appleton, back in Wisconsin, there was a $20 fee on car registrations that came directly to the city, that when they collected the state car registrations, there was, I think it was called a wheel fee or a wheel tax or something like that. I don't know if that's possible in California, but that seems like that might be something to look into as a way to utilize. Certainly those of us who have cars utilize more of the infrastructure and things just with the cars, and that might be a reasonable thing to do as well.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff Dapper, West Laurel Avenue. I'd just first like to thank you all for the work you put into that. Obviously, it was volunteer and the staff. It was a great event, and I'm glad I went to it. The overriding theme for me and the people that I talked to, there were people there who supported the UUT and people who had seen the error of their ways. This is not, none of this is expense issues, guys. This is revenue issues. We are cutting to the bone. We're in the process of burning the town down to pay the light bill. We need more revenue. We don't need to cut expenses. That's why that big pie chart said no one wants to cut anything. We've already got our city staff on reduced hours. These are our friends and our neighbors. These guys are all volunteers. We're cutting people's income down. It's ridiculous. We need more revenue, and we don't have car dealerships like Doherty, and we don't have Home Depot and Walmart like Monrovia, and we don't have the mall. We don't have anything generating sales tax. It has to come from the people. And $30 a month, really? We're going to dismantle this town for $30 or 30 pieces of silver, really? The charm that everybody talks about? We need to come up with something, whether it's a UUT, it could be just call it what you want. Every address in town pays $30 a month with an annual CPI increase with a 2% cap just to live here. We need a steady flow of income, and raising fees isn't going to do it. Laying staff off isn't going to do it. We need big money coming in here to solve these problems, and we just, you know, the conspiracy theorists who think that, you know, we could manage the city better and, you know, we'd save money. It's ridiculous. These are just people that don't want to pay the $30, I mean, or whatever, $27 a month. We need revenue. So I thank you guys, but you're hearing everybody coming up here say it. Nobody wants to cut anything, bring back the UUT. Maybe people will come to their senses and realize and re-vote us some standard, solid, long-term money that you can budget and you can count on, and you can say we're going to have this much, next year we're going to have that much. And we can start putting the city back together again, put these people back to work in City Hall, stop shutting down services. It's just ridiculous. It is not an expense issue. It is a revenue issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Francis Garbaccio, 425 Adams Street. I wasn't at the meeting on Saturday because I was at the city running the yard sale with the senior commission. So I understand your obligation for a balanced budget, but I also feel the council has an obligation to its citizens to do everything possible to maintain the level of services that we desire and have come to expect. I'm strongly in favor of the council voting to use the surplus and reserved Elaine Aguilar spoke of on May 26th for the coming year, and then place on the ballot at the very earliest a new UUT of at least 10% with no sunshine date. Of course, it will be imperative to use every possible avenue to sell this to our citizens, and I, for one, can be counted on to give it my full support. Unfortunately, there is a feeling that there was some misinformation in the last election, and many erroneously believed there were sufficient funds from the UUT to continue funding the budget. We are now all too aware that this was not the case. As a retiree, I do not have unlimited funds, but for the privilege of living in a community such as Sierra Madre, I am willing to pay my fair share to keep our own paramedics, a fully staffed library, community services, and police and fire departments. Speaking of the library, are you aware that almost half of the staff lives in Sierra Madre? I suggest that if you could just take an hour to sit in the library and become aware of the number of patrons, young and old, who come through the doors every day. Also witness the kind of service everyone receives. The patrons in kind are so very appreciative. As a comparison, check out Arcadia, not the library of my choice. I know I'm not alone, and I trust that you, as our representatives, will do what is best for Sierra Madre and its future. Thank you for your time, your service, and your dedication.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpaccio.
Hi, good evening. I'm Barry Ziff, and I'm a trustee as well as a concerned citizen. I wasn't able to be here on Saturday because I was in San Francisco celebrating my 3-year-old twin grandchildren's birthday.
Congratulations.
So I'm not apologizing. We all have our priorities. I want to reiterate what everybody else has said here. I really personally appreciate all that you're doing, the time, the effort that the council is putting into this effort. I really appreciate the collaborative forum that you've brought to this and helping you make the decision that really is truly going to affect our community. I also want to acknowledge what I've perceived as a change in attitude and possibly even a positive change in looking at really what the facts are in terms of our funds and our revenues, and people really looking at that as a total issue and thinking, maybe I made a mistake the first time in voting this down. And like other people have said, I think more and more people are realizing that we do need that tax. It's also imperative that each of you on the city council at some point in time let each of us know what your true feelings are regarding the UUT tax. It seems that our city council is basically in support of the utility tax and our services and our programs when looking at what was shared by the town hall meetings. Regarding the library has made already 30% reductions in staffing since 2011. This reduction has occurred without any services being changed at this time. However, services will be curtailed if we probably go to a level 1 or a level 2, or if we actually go out of town to bring in people to run the library. Also, 2 major city events, namely the art show and the wine tasting, are directly related to the library and are sponsored by the Friends of the Library. And without these 2 events in our town, the culture of our city will truly change. The trustees and the Friends encourage that, as you mentioned, that we participate on some of these subcommittees that you're about to put together. And our suggestion is that you please consider utilizing the current budget surplus as well as the reserves to support the current shortfall for the 215, the 216 budget. Then bring back the UUT with a 10% rate without a sunset clause to enhance further revenue. I know that you are aware of maintaining our community, our small community. This is an important issue in establishing and maintaining a budget. A goal of the library, and I hope a goal of the City Council, is to help to preserve the past, inform the present, and inspire our future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ziv.
Mayor, City Council, City Manager, fellow citizens of Sierra Madre. My name is Paul Hovsepian. The title of my little speech is, "You Get What You Pay For." I couldn't help but notice when I first came into the building, on the right there's a plaque that says dedicated in 1977. Well, it was like around 1977 or 78 when the Proposition 13 was passed by the people of the state, which limited the amount of property tax that can be assessed. My thought is about that, as ironically, is that at this time, there's no way this beautiful building would have been built. I came to Sierra Madre in 2003 to take care of my mom. When she passed in 2011, I moved to an apartment on Mountain Trail. In 2006, I was part of the campaign to elect Joe Mosca City Council. I am proud of that. Once Joe was elected, I attended many council sessions, got to see how things work. Over all these many years, there has been one central theme: budget woes. Despite budget cuts to service, there continues to be the perception that the city is flush with money, such that in the last two elections, to keep the budget balanced and to maintain present service, proposals to continue with the utility user tax were rejected by the majority of voters. That is mind-boggling to me. I mean, why would the city council, the city manager, and public works director say we need more income to pay for services and unless they were serious about it? Who better than they can know what our city needs to thrive and maintain itself than those elected officials and hired personnel who are up close, personal, and are responsible for it? Now, there are present on this council two city council members, Denise Del Mar and Rochelle Erzendi, who campaigned to preserve the values of our village, and at the same time promised to vote no on the utility user tax. I asked you, ladies, how do you plan to preserve and protect our village values when we run out of money? Talk is cheap. And what about all the voters who listened to you and voted no on those taxes? The two of you share a responsibility in where we are now. Meanwhile, we continue to nickel and dime ourselves, cutting here and cutting there to keep the city afloat. When will this pattern end? What will the city look like in 5 to 10 years without a reliable income source? Will we have the council continue to come to the people with meetings and workshops about what to keep and what to cut? I leave you with this true story. When I attended those first council sessions in spring 2006, the issue came up: should the city hook up with the Metropolitan Water District in case there was an emergency and our wells went dry? Two of the council members, Zimmerman and Watts, and some public people spoke and were opposed to the proposition. When it was my turn to speak, I got up and I said, there is no one in this room who can predict what the climate will look like in 5 or 10 years. We could have a major drought, and then what would we do? Thanks to Enid Jaffe, John Buchanan, and Joe Mosca, the council approved that hookup. Here it is 2015. Where would we be without it? The water we drink, flush our toilets, brush our teeth, and water our gardens comes because of that hookup. The course of this city now into its future is in the hands of its citizens. The council are our elected officials. They are there to represent us, to inform us, and to do our will. What do we want, citizens? It is up to you. And I'll end with a quote from Benjamin Franklin: "You get what you pay for."
Thank you, Mr. Hosepian.
Hello, I'm Glenn Putnam on 630 Oakcrest, and I am a library trustee. And I wanted to read a document that I got from Rob Stockley that I'd like to share with you, because I think he had some very good ideas in terms of what we're facing. So, if you can listen to me as Rob, here I go. You have crucial decisions to make on behalf of our town, and I truly appreciate the challenges you face in making these decisions. I commend the City Council for your outreach program in conducting the town hall meeting on Saturday. These efforts have been a good first step toward resolving the systematic fiscal limitations inherent in our city because of a lack of significant revenue sources and limited alternative methods of supplementing general fund revenues. Now, I strongly encourage the council to continue being deliberate and inclusive in exploring the range of options available in addressing the pending general fund deficit. First, Rob recommends that you use the 2014-2015 surplus to partially but substantially offset the projected 2015 and 16 shortfall. Second, earmark a portion of the general fund reserves to balance the 2015 and 16 budget. He listened with interest to your discussion on the level 1 reductions at the May 26 City Council meeting and agreed that this and previous councils have prudently reduced expenses as much as possible without seriously debilitating service levels. However, level 1 reductions would indeed cripple multiple departments in this city without provision of a long-term vision for solving this crisis of insufficient revenues. While I have 2 recommendations for a plausible solution, I endorse the idea of an in-depth analysis of the alternatives described in your May 26th staff report that includes community members on subcommittees and further outreach to stakeholders. I firmly believe that you can find a viable resolution to the loss of the incremental increase in the UUT without damaging many programs that create our cherished sense of community. Please use the resources available to you rather than implementing the level 1 reductions, and be methodical in your decision-making process. Thank you for your public service. Rob fully appreciates and has a deep understanding that you have difficult decisions to make that will not be universally applauded. But I also know gratification of being in the arena, as Theodore Roosevelt said. And Rob also knows the value of time and information in making the best choices among options that are not necessarily of your choosing. By the way, I endorse investigation into a parcel tax to fund the library district to operate the Sierra Madre Public Library. Altadena is an example of this model. And more proactive, that is, council interaction with your counterparts in Arcadia and Pasadena. Solicitation of options for public safety, that is, paramedic service out of Arcadia's FD Orange Grove Station, and police service from options other than just the LA County Sheriff. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Putnam, on behalf of Mr. Stockley.
Barbara Lee Klein. I was not going to get up because over the years I've gotten up so often. The budget crisis is nothing new with Sierra Madre, but I'm not going to call out past council members to look at when did this problem really begin. I'm going to be standing up here instead to say I can't afford $30 a month. I couldn't go to the Saturday meeting because I was working. I work 6 days a week. I'm happy for those on Prop 13. I think it safeguards those senior citizens here in town that also, I'm sure, cannot afford $30 a month. Don't want to see Sir Madre be regentrified because some of us can't afford to upkeep City Hall. What has changed? Back a few years ago, the city council members voted to bring in the retirement funds from the state PERS. That has changed. That took a big chunk out of city money. Not the fires, the amount of fires that we have, the amount of paramedic calls that we have. If you look, everything remains the same. The talk of bringing back the UUT. I initially walked around the first UUT. The entire city supported. It was for safety. Police department, fire department. Everyone signed and said, I am for supporting our own police department and our fire department. What's changed? Paramedics came in, only funded for 2 years. Okay. If they're doing as well as what I've heard, which has changed my mind a bit, I say, let's take a look. But otherwise, I do like the Orange Grove Fire Station that I've mentioned numerous times to contract out. Works for Upper Highland Oaks and Arcadia. Sure, it can work for us. Okay, I'm going to quit getting so angry. I do say, though, if the UT comes back, it does have to have a sunset clause. Otherwise, just open up everybody's checkbook and the city can write whatever amounts they want. Need to have a sunset clause. We know we don't have a large business district. We've always known that. I don't think people move here to town saying, I'm moving in to support City Hall along with buying my house and paying. Okay, so if the UUT does come back, sunset it, and keep it at enough of a level that the taxpayers here can feel comfortable with, not a free open checkbook of whatever. Okay, a few other questions I had getting off of that subject. Sierra Mesa School, way back when they were charged $1, City Council, again, decision, way back when, $1 for that property. How much are we gaining in rent from them now since that's a Pasadena property? Is that something that we could look at increasing along with a few other fees? I do think it's a great idea to have some subcommittees to take a look at what we need to do. But I am not for bringing back the UUT and just leave an open checkbook. I think people in town will line up to see what they can do to help. But I would like to see, again, a restructuring like the two ladies did on this, and some of you voted for it. How much funding can each employee then afford to put into their health contracts and their retirement contracts? I pay out of my own pocket for mine. If I do it, city employees also can do. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Lee. Other comments?
D. Alcorn on Grandview. My concern is that, that time again, we keep nickel and diming the process, and I don't think we've had an adequate budget or revenue for some period of time. Our streets aren't kept up. Our infrastructure's not kept up. I reported last time about the police department even had their roof, but they had to have buckets to catch the water when it rained. And I don't think we've had an adequate budget, right, to start out with. The number was 8% or whatever the numbers are. It hasn't been adequate to keep our city up. And we've cut the already before we got here. We cut the excuse me, the community services. We don't really have program for children. We have some for seniors, but the kids have just been kicked out. We as they indicated, we've got rid of the swimming pool and other programs that the kids can have. We don't have a program for kids. I just want to say that for a long time we haven't had an adequate budget. Now it's really bad. Say, okay, now we're getting really down to the bones. And I subscribe to others say that, do we want this city or do we not? I question. I think that the revenue committee should be one that looked at. I question the UUT because I think that as it indicated, that's not a reliable budget. It started out as something. Now people find ways or different things. That's been going down. The total revenue from that has gone down because of the revenue or the technology that goes on. I think one of the things you might consider, again, was what suggested by Stockley, is some sort of parcel tax to cover either, say, police or fire or the library, something like that. There you have a stable thing. You don't have to go through this problem all the time. It was supported by Altadena. That was when it just had. It was just a renewal. I think every 10 years or something like they do that. And I think that well, you could do, maybe the UUT is easier to pass because you don't require as many people. But I think that it's sort of the other should be looked at, because if we really want to have this thing going on, we need a solid budget. It's going to be steady. UUT is not steady. And I think we should have a parcel tax of some variety, or anyway, some of that nature that's going to be, you can rely on, that should be a constant budget you look at. And again, I'll go back that we haven't had an adequate budget forever. I don't know why I think because again, I'll go back, I don't repeat all that stuff, but we haven't kept up our city as it is. And to cut back nickel, we're going to take up per this person, that person. So I suggest that post haste, you do whatever you're going to do to get the revenue going. You know, you can have your study, make sure you've done your homework, but I wouldn't wait till some other time. I would start as quick as possible to get whatever that process 218 or whatever it is gets on the ballot as soon as you possibly can. And I think the interim is to use your reserves to go through this process to make it so that you really have time and you're not operating in emergency mode. I think there's a lot of emotions going on here, and I don't think that there's been adequate time and discussion to really look at what are we doing, because once you give something away, you have a hard time getting it back. You cut the talent, you cut the whatever it is you're going to cut some people. With that goes a lot of knowledge, and there's some other people being talked about being cut. It can be a major cut to the city, and you will not recoup that. It's impossible to get it back. So I think you really seriously ought to consider those kind of things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alcorn.
Hey, good evening. Steve Tanner, Item 8 Lane, Sierra Madre. So my purpose tonight is not to talk about revenue or expenses, but how to buy a little time. And I think we've heard several comments on that already. Unfortunately, I think the latest data I have is from June 30th, 2014, a year ago. But at that time, we had unassigned reserves of over $500,000. At this point, I don't know if those have been assigned, or you guys would know, I suppose, with your other meetings. But what's also interesting is we've been setting a goal for ourselves for the last number of years to build up a reserve, right? So roughly half of our revenue. So at the moment, we're there, right? So if you've decided that this is a rainy day, that we can take advantage of using this, I think this would at least evaluate, I'll give you the chance to evaluate some options over the next 3-6 months, worst case a year, so that when you do find those revenue sources, and whether those are taxes or whether those are fees or whether those are other ways to generate revenue and bolster revenue, I would personally support a Tesla dealership here in town. I don't know if we have enough room for that, but I think the taxes on that would do pretty well for us. So,
You just want to test drive one, right?
I have test driven one, and it's very impressive. So I recommend it. It's a lot of fun. So from the perspective of this group's discussion tonight, it'll probably continue on for a little while, and then you'll have your own discussion. But the reality is, I don't think it's prudent to try to make this decision in 3 weeks and cut the services that you're planning on cutting, with a lot of the reasons that you won't get them back. Some of the brain trust that we're losing with young men like Adam, who's been a great servant here in the city, found a great job, I'm sure, in a much bigger place. Had he given the other options, I think he might have liked to stay. So when I look at some of the resources that we've had over the years that we've lost for one reason or another, it's pretty bad. So that's my vote for tonight, my recommendation. Hopefully you'll take that in consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Debbie Bamberger, 241 Ramona Avenue. As many have stated, this is a revenue issue. It's not an expenditure issue. I hope that you all are convinced of that now. I understand from that great presentation about the input on the 6th that it's not just the folks that come to the city council meetings, but sounds like the overwhelming number of people in the community that came out on that day agreed. Given that case, given that reality, that it's a revenue issue, what do we do at this point? And that's what you're having to deal with tonight. In your own family, in my own family, suppose I realize that I need more revenue than I have. Maybe college tuition is going to be a lot more than what I thought it was going to be. But you know, my first step is not to call the realtor and sell the house. My first step is to look at my savings account and see what I can do for that first year of tuition. At the same time, I'm going out and thinking about a second job or looking for a better paying job or something. But the first step is not selling the house. And since we've already sold some of the house in previous councils, doing the best that they can with regard, for example, with the pool, this bit about cutting a little bit here and cutting a little bit there is just kicking the can down the road and losing some things that we'll never get back. I did, when I was up here a week ago, ask some questions, and maybe I didn't ask them in the best way, because they were not answered later on, so I want to be very straightforward here. What is the projected surplus of the dollar amount of the 2014-15 budget year, the one that's about to end later this month? Was this surplus planned a year ago when council passed the budget? Or if not that surplus, what was the amount of the surplus planned? What are the specific amounts in the general reserve? What is the dollar amount of the 50%? That would be the assigned reserve, I believe. What is the dollar amount in the committed reserves? And what does that mean, committed? Committed to what? What's going on there? And what is the dollar amount in the unassigned? I've gotten a little bit of information. I'm not sure whether it's accurate, but and you can help me with that at the end. But it looks to me like if you take on our behalf as citizens, the unassigned and the surplus, we're okay for the next year, buying that time that one of the previous speakers talked about, in order to deal with our real problem. Our real problem, the lack of revenue. And we do need a steady stream, not sunsetted, not temporary. These are not temporary costs to maintain our standard of living. So we need something like the UUT, something like a parcel tax that doesn't go away, that doesn't sunset. Someone at some point spoke about the information at the last election, which was both electing new council members and dealing with the UUT. And I think the sitting council at that point, a little over a year ago, was unanimous and worked very hard at passing the UUT extension, whatever it was called. And yes, some of you ran on a platform that we could maintain everything without the UUT, and I understand as you are considering these cuts that you now also understand that we cannot maintain the current level of service and without the UUT. So I hope that you will be as strong advocates for enhanced revenue now that you realize that in fact we do need the revenue in order to support our standard of living.
Thank you, Mrs. Bamberger. Anyone else? Okay, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the council. First of all, can we answer the questions about the reserves? You've got the numbers right in front of you.
Actually, it's not in this staff report. I will go from memory.
I have them, if you don't.
Okay.
I wrote them down.
The
earlier.
projected surplus for this fiscal year is about $350,000. I honestly don't remember what it was projected at a year earlier. We were projecting a surplus, but I don't remember how much. It does increase. Generally speaking, our surplus increases if we don't have any unexpected expenditures, because when we budget at the beginning of the year, we assume full staffing, every position filled. As you were during the year, because of staff turnover, we don't spend all the money that we've been allocated for salaries. So generally speaking, we can pick up $100,000 by the end of the fiscal year from those staff vacancies. We do have our reserves. We set aside our reserves in different categories. One of them is the 50% of our revenues we set aside in reserves. That is the goal that council set, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. We've met that goal and we've exceeded it. So there's about 4 million sitting, a little more than 4 million sitting in the bank as reserves. Then there's our uncommitted reserves, which would be the amount that's not committed and isn't part of that 50%. So it's unallocated, no project has been identified for these funds, and that's approximately 500, Mayor Capocha?
$553,000.
$553,000 that's uncommitted, not designated for any use. And then we have a little over $1 million of committed reserves. And in fact, one of the things you did this evening on the consent calendar item is you actually set aside a bit more future committed reserves. Those are funds that are committed for projects that haven't happened yet, but the council's already approved them. One example is there's $400,000 sitting in committed reserves for a street project this fiscal year. We didn't get it done this fiscal year, so we're going to use that money next fiscal year, so it sits aside in our reserves in that committed bucket. The council can uncommit committed funds. The council can also change the reserve policy and dip into those, the 50%, the 4 million that's sitting aside. It's at your discretion by formal council action. You can dip into those too.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk about how we want to proceed. I mean, I think we're all in agreement on the committees.
Not necessarily.
Go ahead.
I'd like to, if we want to talk about the committees, I'd like to.
Oh, can we, I just want to answer some questions from the audience first, because we keep hearing about the paramedics out of Arcadia. My understanding is Arcadia does not want to participate in helping us with that.
At this point, Arcadia and Pasadena have not indicated interest at this point in time.
So that's, so we can throw that out, right?
At this point in time.
Okay. And also the CalPERS, I hear a lot about the CalPERS. If we were to pull out and go into a defined contribution benefit plan, would that, is that easily done? Is it going to cost us any money to do that? My understanding is it would cost us quite a bit, in millions, just to pull out of CalPERS at this point.
Correct.
And also CalPERS is in the process of redoing their reformulas, and a bill's coming out to try to help cities alleviate some of their costs that they have right now. Have you all heard that?
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Right? You don't know? Okay.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Goss, what was your,
Well, I'd like to hear a good argument for the subcommittees. You know, not to beat a dead horse, but, you know, when I ran for office a little over a year ago, and then 3 years ago, I studied the budget pretty carefully. I have a pretty good idea, I think, now, but it was the same idea I had a year ago. I mean, the subcommittee sounds good. I mean, there's maybe some details we need to hash out, but I have a very solid idea where I think I'd like to see the council go, and I'd like to have at it. I'd like to have a discussion about it. I don't know how Councilmember Harabedian feels about that. He's not here to make a case for or against that. But here's my basic argument. I don't, just from the last meeting we had, just when I just heard kind of cursory discussion of the contracting out, I heard no support for contracting out the police or the library. I mean, if we're not serious about even considering it, why have a subcommittee? I'm certainly opposed to it. And I'm thinking about revenues. I mean, how much data do we need? I mean, how many people need to speak? How much, I think it was 85-90% of the people who responded, and it was a very, very a great meeting. We had so many people came and just poured out their hearts about how concerned they are about how our city is on the precipice of a significant drop in standard of living and quality of life if these services get cut. And the perception I've heard, and I heard this going door to door last year, the same thing. We've already cut things to the bone. We don't want to cut our police department anymore. We want paramedics who can answer a call and get us life-saving support in a decent time. I was opposed to contracting out the pool because I thought just having a community pool was something that we shouldn't have compromised on, but we didn't have the monies. I threw my vote in on that. We had no money for a community pool. So it seems to me that we can get into a subcommittee if you like. If you guys really feel strongly about it, I'll happily participate. But I don't see why we are delaying. I don't know why we are delaying. We all have had plenty of opportunities to look at these numbers, to talk to our public. That's my 10 cents worth.
Okay, well, point well taken, but let's, I think there might be some value to the subcommittees, but let's go ahead and talk about it.
You know, in my opinion, the subcommittees aren't delaying anything. We still have to come up with some plan tonight to give directive to the city manager. So the subcommittees aren't delaying anything. It's another way to get information and get information out to our public, just like we did with all of the community input meetings. My whole goal has always been to have a stabilized budget. And since 2008, history has shown we have not had a stabilized budget. And the main reason is because we had a UUT that went up, and then we had a UUT that goes down. So if you're using your UUT money to pay for programs and salaries, then it has to be stabilized. And it hasn't been. And that's part of the reason that we're in this predicament, and we're not able to project out and do what we need to do for future projects. So the whole idea behind the community input meetings was to say and show people the facts. These are the facts. And tell us what you want us to do. Do you want us to try to raise revenues so we can put more services back? Do you want us to, as the public has said 2 times in a row now, that they would like the UUT to sunset, then if we did that, this is what's going to have to happen. We've explored everything as far as employment and staffing, and there are still some ways that we can save some money in employee benefits, and there are some ways that we can save on some staffing, but it's not going to be enough to make up this revenue. So going out to the community, showing the facts, getting their input, has shown us that yes, people that showed up to those community meetings and emailed said absolutely, find a way to raise revenues. Is the UUT the best? I don't really know, because as Mr. Alcorn pointed out, we're losing money on the UUTs. So if there's another way that we can bring revenue, we might want to consider that. But we owe it to our city and our folks to at least look at those contracts, if nothing else, to say, there's no way that this is going to save us money. And we can still make decisions, whether it be cuts or trying to put something on the ballot. We can still do that now, but we still have I think a responsibility to the public to carry this out and get their input on different ways to raise the revenues and looking at those 2 contracts.
Okay.
Can I just respond to that real quickly? I'm good with that. I mean, I think you're sincere, Councilmember Del Mar. I thought your involvement in that whole town hall meeting was very positive and productive, and I take you at your word. But I do want to go back to this whole idea of, is the police contracting even a viable idea? According to the numbers we got, 13 people voted for police contracting out of 250 plus people that were there. Seriously, do we really want to talk about that? I mean, I guess we could.
We might want to.
Well, I mean, for my money, it seems to me that if you took community input seriously and you want to make cuts and you don't want to do police contract because people seem to want their own police, then you have to look at the level 1, level 2, and level 3 cuts and or revenue or some combination of both. But if you guys are, dead set on having these committees, I'm not going to stand. I'm not going to.
Sure. Let's hear from everybody and let's tweak that a little bit and see what we want to do. Councilmember Arizmendi, any thoughts on subcommittees?
I think it's prudent to move forward on the subcommittees. It's something we've talked about. I think we just want to make sure that as we are making a decision, we are making a decision based on all of the facts. We kind of just tucked the contract proposals aside and not really looked at them even though we're hearing from the community that that is the direction that those that have been in attendance don't want to go in necessarily. So I don't think, and I think it'll be time well spent, and to make sure that we have the perspective also from those that are involved, whether it be from the Library Board of Trustees, also from other commissioners, and making sure that we have other sets of eyes on it and maybe others in the community. So I think we have a responsibility to have the subcommittees. We may want to just say, you know, come back in so much time and whatever information you find at that time, report back. But I don't think it's going to delay us in the other decisions we have to make.
Okay, let me throw in, I mean, we haven't discussed whether we're all in favor of a revenue solution to put something on the ballot yet, but let's just set that aside for right now. But let's just say that we, you know, whatever we put out there fails. I mean, that is a possibility. And I would really like to know in a little bit more detail myself about what the various options are for two of the subcommittees, for the police and the library. Because when I read the proposals, I'm not knowledgeable or skilled enough to evaluate those proposals myself. And I saw positives in both of the proposals. And of course, there's some, you know, very serious problems with them. But this is why I don't have a problem with going forward with the subcommittees on that, because I think it's only going to shed light. And the more data we have, the more information we have, that we are then able to communicate to our constituents one way or the other. I think it just never hurts to know the truth. I don't think it's going to affect us. I mean, I see it as a completely different option about, or decision about what guidance we give to the city manager about the budget. That's a completely different thing. This is not interfering with any kind of a timeline to put something on the ballot, on whichever ballot we choose to do something. So that's reason enough to look at those two. And on the revenue side, I don't want to presume that the UUT is the way to go if we choose. I really am kind of intrigued with exploring a little bit to see if a library parcel tax might be a better way to go, or another way to approach it. I don't know. So I see no harm in doing it. It's going to consume a little staff time. I'm always concerned about that, but it's another opportunity to get our citizens involved and to participate in the process and help us make a decision. That being said, I'm willing to make a decision on everything right now, but I don't think we need to right now. So I'm going to hold back my opinions on some of the things. So and that's kind of where I stand. I mean, we can also talk.
Well, let's talk about timelines.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks, we have to make a decision about our budget. So we're talking about subcommittees, I guess, are going to meet in the next 2 weeks. Or are we talking about delaying that decision
No.
and having subcommittees
Not
meet
at all.
over the summer?
Not at all. I see these as mutually exclusive. Maybe we should have tackled the budget problem first here rather than the subcommittees first. We need to give the city manager direction on how we're going to balance the budget. The subcommittees are not going to help us do that. The subcommittees, I think, are down the road, and they tie into revenue options. For example, what if it's really viable to outsource the library? I mean, the proposal we have on our table right now says they're going to open for more hours on Sunday. And that proposal says that it's going to deliver a higher level of service we have today. Now, maybe we all think that's a bunch of BS, but maybe there's something there that we should examine. When we get the information back from that, and likewise from a similar police committee, maybe that ties into what we put on a ballot for revenue. If these are viable, we say what's on the surface right now is that this is a viable, about $500,000 savings. That's a 2% UUT right there. So maybe we can lower whatever we were thinking. It could tie into it. And again, I don't want to say, I mean, I could say what I'm in favor of, but I just think there's value in going through this exercise.
So that presupposes that we're going to do a budget on the 26th just for 1 year and then wait on the second year until we've had all these subcommittees come back.
I don't.
So, or is that, so what we're gonna talk about tonight
Yeah.
is how we're gonna finance 2015, 2016.
Well, we can talk about, we can talk about 16, 17 too, but as Councilmember Del Mar says, this is the part of the problem we have is this whipsawing. I don't know that we can really, we can't solve the 217 problem without revenue unless we cut really, really, really deep. And I said at the last meeting, I wasn't willing to do that, and my mind hasn't really changed on that one, so,
And I'll just add too, when I'm thinking about timing, and I can say I am thinking that tonight, direction will be for 15, 16, not 16, 17. Because even if we are going to consider a revenue source, a UUT can take up to 18 months till we're seeing money come in, if not more. Parcel tax may take 2 to 3 years. And I just spoke to the one of the Altadena board, library elected, it's a special district, so it's an elected position. And so it took 2 to 3 years for that to come through, to see from the initial conception of it and to actually realize the dollars through.
With
So
all due respect, we don't have 2 to 3 years. And
I'm
I have to
not-
tell you, we,
if I can
UUT,
finish,
but the UUT,
Councilmember
the
Ross,
UUT.
if I can
Okay,
finish.
go ahead.
can I facilitate? Yeah,
Go ahead.
please, go
If
ahead.
I can just finish, I'm just saying that there are timelines to consider whatever the revenue source is. I'm not saying that's the direction we're gonna go into. So all of these pieces are all information and data that we use to make the best decision possible. So, I'll leave it there.
Well, let me just say, but if that is the case, that it took 3 years, that may factor into what we do as a choice. So again, what's the harm in getting a little more information on that?
And that's the importance of the committees.
Yeah.
My 2 cents, I think we only can really look at 15, 16 right now, because as everybody, all the 10 meetings and the webinar and the June 6th, and I think the important reason for doing those was to kind of see where the community was. The data shows us that the community in 2012 and 2014 did not want to extend the UUT as it is now and with the sunset. And so for me, it was, I think, good for us to gather that data from the different community groups, and overwhelmingly everybody said, we need to increase revenue. The fact of the matter is, people have not come to the voting booth, or maybe they've changed their mind this year, but the majority of people have said, no, we don't want to increase our revenue. So, to me, we heard overwhelmingly that that's what people would like to do. They would like to see us get something on the ballot, a parcel tax, a city tax, a UUT on the ballot. So depending on how that happens in April, is going to define what happens in 16, 17. But we can make a decision, at least going somewhere, making some cuts in 15, 16. I think we need to start down that path too, just in case we don't get any extra revenue in 15, 16. So to me, it's like this big puzzle that we're trying to put together and trying to be as responsible as possible. And maybe we can make some cuts and reinstate them if the revenues come through, but nobody has a crystal ball. So I think I'm just trying to be prudent on every angle, so we can at least start getting a balanced budget.
If I can also comment, we don't even need to make any recommendations on subcommittees tonight, unless we need that to balance the budget, if it's a long-term thing. So, we can put that aside and talk about it another time to say, well, what would we like, if we wanted to do this, what would we like it to be?
I don't know, we have 3 people, and Councilman Goss said he would go along with it if it was in the majority, so we can go
Yeah,
ahead.
if you want to do the subcommittees, I'm on board. All I can say is that, the public is expecting us to put a budget together.
Well, we need to do that tonight.
And the idea that we're going to put off
No.
2016, 27, let me finish. If the idea we're going to put that off with indefinitely, because that's what we're doing right now, is 2016, 2017, is we're going to put off indefinitely. We're going to study it. That's costing us money, so we're going to do that. Okay. Last time we met, I said I could support using the surplus to roll over this year. Maybe we can talk about it, what else we might backfill this year with. But I just don't think that, it just doesn't feel right. It seems to me like we should have all been prepared to be able to make these decisions by now, by tonight, if not tonight, by the 26th.
Well, we are going
And
to.
I'm personally ready to do that, but
No,
you guys
I'm
have
with
the
you.
vote, so
No,
we're
no.
gonna do it. you know?
Let's make one thing clear. We're going to give the city manager direction on the upcoming budget. That is a separate issue from the subcommittees. You know, I mean, we can give her direction right now in the subcommittees. We can put it aside for the moment and tackle the meat of what we're here to do tonight, if
Well,
you prefer to do
I
that.
mean, let's talk about that.
You want to talk about the budget right now and just put aside the
Well,
subcommittees?
in terms of what we want the staff to come back to us with on the 26th. I think that's what we're trying to do tonight, right?
Madam City Manager, I think you expect us to give you direction so that you can give us a budget to approve on the 26th.
The council can do that, definitely.
Well,
Well, there's-
if we
there's two-
don't do
the
that,
staff- The staff report says, you can give me direction tonight, and we'll bring back something for the council to approve based on that direction on the 23rd.
yes.
Another option is to, if this is gonna take a bit more time, we can draft resolutions that sort of give us spending authority for the first few months of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
But you're not really adopting a total annual budget. You're allowing us to continue the status quo for 3-4 months.
Okay.
Till you formally adopt a budget.
Okay.
Those are the two options that are presented, and those are options that are available to the council.
So just quick poll, what do you guys want to do? Do you want to give her direction to put together the budget, or you want to buy time and just give spending authority at the current level of spending until we can decide? I personally am ready to give her direction tonight on how to prepare the budget.
I am too.
Also, but I would like to have the discussion on that. And I
Oh,
would be okay with having, well, I'd just be okay saying, okay, let's just plan for the committees, just say, I was thinking it would be the police contract, and then the library, and then the revenue. We have 3 subcommittees. We don't have to come up with them today, but I think we've all agreed that subcommittees make sense. Let's move forward with that and say those were the 3. Fine, we can put that aside and figure out who's gonna be on it later, but,
That's fine with me.
Good.
okay.
Okay, so shall we move on to tackle
Yes.
the big issue, which is the budget? And, you know, I'd just like to hear from everybody, what level of cuts are you willing to live with? And by definition, if it doesn't add up to the deficit, we're gonna take our surplus from last year and we're gonna take some reserves to pay for it. So, who would like to start?
Okay, I guess I will. I would like to go ahead with all the level 1 cuts except for the community services. I think we can float that $8,000. And overwhelmingly, everybody, I don't think one person said that they really wanted to see community services cut. Everybody talked about the heart of Sierra Madre, and that is the heart, is our community services. So for right now, if we went with the level 1 reductions in all the departments as recommended by staff, and whatever we need to use our reserves.
Okay?
I think we need to be fiscally responsible, and as much as we cannot anticipate what a possible revenue stream is, and if there will be one, that we need to make the cuts immediately. And I also was ready at the last meeting to make the recommendations, and I had voiced that I would be, as difficult as it would be to do, to take all of the level 1 cuts. And at first I said, not to community services, but when I reviewed it, I know the community services, I think the level 1 was the wisteria vine, and eliminating that. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
Right. So I actually would include community services with the wisteria vine to make that the 316 cut, to carry over the 350, I thought it was 360,000, I'm hoping it is, to make that about 676, or let's say 677,000, so that's including level 1 cuts, the carryover of 360 if it is 360, and then getting the difference from the reserves.
Okay. Council, Mayor Pro Tem Goss,
So, I need the precise numbers. We have how much in the surplus? Is it 380? About?
4 million?
Is
no,
it-
no,
no,
the
the
surplus
surplus.
for last year's
surplus-
360.
So we're talking about rolling over.
was 360.
It was 360,
I didn't bring those staff reports.
356.
356. It is 356. Yes.
And if we did pure level one, straight across the board, let's make the exceptions.
17.
It was 317, okay, I've got
A
the
total
old
of
one.
677.
Okay, so the total is 677, and that leaves us with a shortfall of
60-something thousand.
that we would pull from reserves.
If I was correct, and was it 740 is the deficit? 760. I had it on my.
So the,
762.
762,
Minus the 677.
so 762 minus 677 is how much? Somebody do the math.
I can't read even my own writing. That's terrible.
762 minus
677.
85.
So $85,000 would come
that's
from.
if you use reserves.
Reserves.
And that would come from unassigned reserves.
Exactly.
Okay, hold on.
So, five,
Assigned reserves are 832,000.
I had 553.
Well, that's after you take the surplus out.
Oh, right. So,
Let me, can I just be,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
we want you to be blunt.
Well,
Yes.
I'm gonna be blunt. I'm gonna just be blunt. Last meeting, I was willing to do that. And I guess in theory, I'm willing to do it if I thought we were seriously headed towards a 2-year budget, which we're supposed to be doing, and we're not. And so I think we're sending the wrong message. I think doing the first level cuts, we've just heard from the public that everything's cut to the bone, but what the heck, let's cut it some more. And we'll see if we can come up with a way to pay for it in the future. I don't like that. I don't like the feel of it. I thought we were gonna sit down and have a serious plan by the end of this budgetary year, for the next budgetary year, that could give us a reasonable amount of hope to backfill and repay for these cuts after we'd made them at the end of the year. I don't see that tonight, therefore I cannot support those cuts. I think the best I could offer is to agree to the rollover and just make up the balance from the reserves for this upcoming fiscal year, with the hope that we have the ability to come up with a revenue measure that would be adequate enough to fund our government in the next
So I just want to
budgetary year.
understand, you want to come up with the budget for 15-16 and 16-17?
Well, I don't think we're going to do that tonight
No,
or
but-
in 2
but is-
weeks.
But is that what you would like to do?
That is what I've been saying for the last
Okay, how
month.
would you do that?
Well,
I would just like to hear how you would do that.
We just simply have to talk it over. If we're not serious about it tonight, we'll delay it.
Well,
till
we're.
whenever you want to come
excuse
back
me,
from the
we're
subcommittee.
very serious about it tonight. I mean, I don't know what would be giving you the impression that we're
Well, I mean,
not serious.
okay,
It would be do all the level 3s tonight, if that's what.
I don't-
well,
No, I didn't hear
well,
that.
that's just I would have just the opposite view. It's
well-
obvious to me we need to do a revenue measure, take it back out to the people, 10%, 12%, maybe it would be property tax, maybe it would be utility tax, I'm not sure. I'd like to hear a discussion, because I think we're all very well informed on this.
But
And
if
I'm
we-
willing
but
to
if we do
to
that,
listen.
we can't come up with the budget if we're waiting for a revenue source, right?
Okay.
Because you can't depend on a possible revenue source to balance a budget.
Could I ask a question, Madam City Manager? What requires us to put together a 2-year budget?
It's just council policy. There isn't any.
Do we need a
state law,
resolution?
federal law.
Do we need,
No.
so we could just say, forget about the second year?
Council can direct me to just prepare a 1-year budget. I would like to say that even if we do a 1-year budget, there's a page in the budget where we project out. Of course, we're just projecting a percentage increase, but we'll still do our projection out.
Yeah.
But there really is no, it's not in our municipal code, it's not a state law, it is truly
Okay.
your prerogative on what you would like
Look,
to
this is
direct me to prepare.
this is a difference without a distinction. We all know that something has to happen for the second year. I really don't want to belabor that point. We're focused on the next coming year. We need to give direction to the city manager because we have to pass a budget. And if we don't do that, we need to give her authorization to spend money at a certain level.
Right.
So we're going to do one of those two things.
At least for the first year.
Right. For the first year. I don't really care about
And
the second year.
we're not actually taking action tonight, but we're giving direction to
We're
bring
gonna
back
vote
a
on
budget
it.
that we will discuss and take action on in
Yeah.
2 weeks.
But let's give her direction that we can approve in 2 weeks, because I don't want to go through this drill again.
Well, and just a point of process, though, I mean, even if we were to give her tonight direction for a 2-year budget, the only direction to go in would be to make extreme cuts to meet the $1 million deficit and/or to give direction to keep using reserves. And that's, to me, isn't really, that's not balancing a budget. So I think what we are limited with at this point, not knowing what a possible revenue stream would be, is to approve a 15-16, and/or give direction, I should say, for 15-16. And I think what we're proposing today, at least that I'm proposing, is that to be as fiscally disciplined and prudent as possible is to make those level 1 cuts, consider the rollover from the 360, and then using the difference from the general fund for the $85,000
From reserves.
from reserves.
So what direction do you recommend?
And I'll just add, I'll just add too that if we have a resolution that's just going to keep us in a holding pattern, we're just going to keep being in a holding pattern to push it. And which, to your point, Councilmember Goss, is that you don't want to keep pushing this down the road. And I think
don't, no.
we need to take action tonight to give direction to be this specific, so that as we're coming back in 2 weeks, if we're ready to make an adoption at that point, we'll be ready to make the adoption.
So it's your position that to do a 2-year budget, we need to do the level 3 cuts for the second year?
And I don't want to do that.
I'm not gonna do
So, no, I'm giving an extreme that at this point, to approve a budget for 16-17, that's all we have, and/or to use reserves. There's no other option because we cannot forecast for a possible revenue stream. This is not taking away, that's why it was so important, I think, for the committees to establish that, so that we are doing that concurrently.
Maybe we want to get that revenue committee started tonight, so they can
We
start
could.
working.
Yeah,
That's,
we
I mean,
could.
that's an important committee.
I'll just say this, I mean, Mayor Pro Tem Goss, if you were thinking that we were going to the council was going to make recommendations on revenue tonight, I can understand your point of view. Okay, well, that's fine. I just want to say I'm not ready for that. I don't know if you guys are. So that's not going to
okay.
happen.
We'll wait.
So given that, what direction do we want to give to the city manager to prepare a budget for us? If it would help, I'll go next and let you go last.
Please.
Okay.
Please do that. I mean,
All
I
right.
think I've already taken a position
Okay,
here.
my position hasn't changed since the last meeting. I'm really not willing to go through the cuts, and I'm more taking that position even more strongly now by the feedback that I got. I just think these cuts are gonna be devastating, and I don't think there's any need to do it because we have very healthy reserves. I don't think it's prudent to spend reserves, but I think in this case, the damage to the community and what the community expects warrants spending the reserves. And I'll just leave it at that. I don't think I need to elaborate anymore. So my vote is to not cut and to just continue with the budget as presented and make up the difference in reserves until we can figure out what to do with revenue. So, where do you stand? And
I'm with you on that.
So then we're split. Okay. So, can either of you bend on that?
I think it would be irresponsible for us to not make cuts at the same time of taking money from general fund, or general reserves.
And irresponsible in what way? How is it irresponsible?
I think we still have an issue at hand where we have our expenses do not meet the revenues. And it is, as a business would do, and I heard, really good examples out there about what you would do in a family household. And I know in my family household, we would have to cut expenses and consider other revenue streams. I can understand that some of these cuts, and I think the staff did really tough job in finding what is the minimum what would minimally impact each department. And I see that they're pretty significant, but at the same time, if and when we have a revenue stream coming in, some of those part-time positions can be put back into full-time positions. I'm trying to see some of it. Wisteria Vine, we can put the Wisteria Vine back in. So they really created a level 1. I think that will have minimal impact in each service area. At the same time, it will have impact, but as minimal as possible when you compare it to a level 2 and level 3.
Let me ask a different question. How far off the level 1 would you be willing to bend? I mean, instead of the full 317,000, is there a number that you can live with?
And so I think the answer would be tough because I'm basing this on the expertise of each department head and how they were able to look at the big picture. Because as we all talked about, these all integrate. And at this level 1, how can we still function, still be operational, and not really cut? And if we gave an arbitrary number of a cut, I don't think it would be fair to the departments to do that.
Let me try it a different way. Would you be willing to make level 1 cuts in just certain departments and not others?
Which ones are you proposing? Is there something?
I'm not proposing yet, but I can. I'm asking
go
you
ahead.
first.
Propose. I mean, what would you propose?
Okay, again, what I don't want to do is leave with a stalemate here, because
Right.
that's not helpful. We need to give her direction. So I think if I was to cut, I mean, I'd start with administration, which means that we're going to close, tighten up on the city hall hours again. And
You're saying you would be okay with the cuts in administration?
I would cut,
Okay.
I would make a cut in administration, and I'd look
121?
close, well, that's 121, that's what we
Okay.
have today.
What else?
I would cut the library, and I would just ask that we just take a slice out of the rest without specifying exactly what, and we've just got to find a way, and again, I'm a little bit different. I would just defer to the city manager and say, hey, I'm putting it back on you to make some cuts in each department. I know you don't like that, but I think you can do it.
Yes, sir.
So that would be about 200,000.
Yeah,
So you said, I'm sorry, administration and library.
yes.
Leave fire alone, leave planning alone.
Yep,
in one
I'm
place.
just really adverse to cutting public safety and the planning department. I know that people go after that, but when I look at what's at risk there, I just cannot see doing that, and public works is just almost pointless to make a cut there.
So you're
If,
looking,
if the council doesn't mind, on fire, if you were to take half of the 20, they would still, it would help the situation.
Yes.
I can tell you that in planning, those were the potentially unreimbursed. That was extra staffing for when we get a special, we always included some money in, we didn't spend it if we didn't need to use it for additional contract staffing. This is above and beyond the reimbursable, what we're getting reimbursed. If you were to take half of that, which is quite a bit of money, that would
35?
that would leave some cushion there, should we have, and you could, and I have to, you can really take all of it, you can take all of it, and if there comes a need where we need increased contract, we would have to basically put it on the agenda and ask for a contract for X amount.
But
if you don't want to do that, just take half.
Okay,
of it.
well,
So if
no,
we
I'm-
did this now, none of our full-time people or part-time people would be eliminated from
Well,
planning.
administration eliminates.
No, I'm just talking planning.
Planning, correct. In planning, none of the full or part-time are eliminated with that $78,000. That is,
$78,000.
that's, I would say half of it easily, wouldn't be a problem. And then I would do just half of the police department, because, that would bring them back some of their part-time staff.
So
So
then that would put us at 192.
192 total?
No, it'd be
No,
more
it'd be
than
higher than
that.
that.
Am I
'Cause
counting wrong?
191 just for administrative and,
It was 121,440 for administration, right? 70,316 for library, 10,000
10 for fire.
fire, and then let's say 35.
Right,
I'm sorry, wow, 236.
and then,
236, 756.
And how much of the 121,000 for the level one for administration is our part-time folks?
30,000? $30,000 is the part-time folks.
So if we,
So if we added the 30,000 back in, then we would be able to have City Hall open the hours that it is now, correct?
Correct, it's our current level of staffing.
So instead
okay,
of
so make
120.
that 90,000 instead of 121?
Mhm.
Okay, so take 30,000 back out of the 236, so we're roughly $200,000 in round numbers. I could live with that.
That's 200 plus the 2.
Can I just have a brief question, Madam City Manager? The rollovers, the surplus that we're talking about rolling over,
560.
typically, doesn't the council put that in reserves?
Correct.
So I just want that to be known here, that I think there's at least consensus here on that much, that we are digging into reserves to the extent that we're not putting money from a surplus into reserves.
But we did that last year as well.
Yeah, but I wanted to know that it's, what I'm getting is support from everyone here that we're going to take money from
Understand
from
that.
reserves,
I
so,
understand it clearly.
okay.
So if I'm calculating correctly, that means it would be taking about 200,000 out of reserves.
In addition to the rolled over surplus.
200,000 out of reserves, 360 rolled over,
Okay.
and 200,000 of cuts.
I could live with that.
You're okay with 200,000 cuts?
But I really need to stress, we need to get these subcommittees going, even the contracting one. Because just in case we don't get something on a revenue stream, we need to be prepared and ready to go.
So can we just clearly state what we just to make sure we've got the numbers? So administration, we're talking about 90,000 in cuts. Okay, and library is 70,000, 316. Planning is one half of
Well, we
78,000?
said 35.
35,000.
And then 10.
35 would remain, or 43 remains? What are you subtracting 35?
Subtracting out 35,000.
So
That'd be
43 remains?
Mhm.
43,000.
And then
And
10,000.
police was,
10.
take 10 out of,
Leave 10 in. Take 9,
Oh,
take
leave 10.
9,000
I thought
out.
that was fire. You said police?
okay.
Okay, wait a second. Going back to the planning. So at level one, we had $118,000, right?
Well, no, that was revised to $78,000 at level 1.
Okay.
Can we just to get on the same page, let's talk about how much we're going to cut, not how much we're
Cut?
going to leave.
Okay.
Just to make sure we're on the same page. So can we start at the top again? Administration is 90,000? Okay,
Well, 90,000 is what you're leaving in, that's right, I mean,
Oh.
I guess it's how you say it.
Okay,
90
I'm
Instead of
sorry.
121,000 reduction,
gonna
it's a
cut.
$90,000 reduction, correct?
Yes.
not-
Okay.
okay, darn it, $90,000 cut.
Reduction.
Reduction, let's not say cut,
Cut.
reduction.
And then nothing from community services, so we're still gonna
Right.
do the Wisteria Vine.
Yeah.
Uh-huh,
And then I have 10,000 from fire,
Right?
okay,
and then the amount that will remain in the keep the 70,316 from the library.
yep,
And planning the new number, what's going to be in what the cut's gonna be is 43,000.
43.
That
okay.
leaves 35 still. And then 10,000 from police.
I didn't even include the police, so.
Okay, so now add up 90,000, 10,000, 70,000, just round it off.
I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself. I see what you're saying, Mayor Capocha. Police should be 9,216 to leave 10. Am I confusing myself now?
I didn't even hear police the first cut
Okay.
through, so.
9,216. Okay, so somebody get a calculator.
I have one.
90,000
Yeah.
plus 10,000 plus 70,316 plus 43,000 plus 9,216, and total is
222,532.
532.
Yep, 222.
So that would be the proposal
to cut.
of reductions, how
Of
much we're going to
reduction,
cut from the baseline that was presented before. Okay, so the question is, does everybody agree with that? Does anybody want to make further, what can you guys live with? you
If
know?
that's what you will approve today, I
Yeah,
can
I'm
live with
fine
that.
it.
So we bring that back to council in 2 weeks as a budgetary proposal, but that can be debated in 2 weeks and change any way we
again.
want, right?
Public hearing,
Good.
and
I'll support
you're
it
the public
tonight.
Again, and you'll get to talk about it, and we'll have 5 council members.
Okay, public, if you like it, come to the next meeting and say so. If you don't like it, please say so, and we'll-
Thought you were gonna tell them to stay home.
I want to hear you all to come either way, because we're going to make a final decision on what we're going to do, and it's going to impact services.
Yeah.
Did you say 222-532? Is that what I said?
I had 222-536.
Oh, 536?
Close, yeah, 532, but we're
$1 or
close.
$2 's
I'm
not
not gonna worry
gonna
about
matter.
$2.
Okay.
Okay, so we've done that.
Now we need to do revenues.
Okay, so revenue, what, again, I,
Best way to summarize the revenues, so we can get through this, is you don't need to take any action on the plan check fees. We're gonna use the ICC, just noted at the bottom of the, but it doesn't change the fees. Where we would like direction from you on is the
public work fees. and
Planning.
Department.
Planning Department variances and CUPs. And I will tell you what page those are on. We are currently at, okay, it is actually page 4 of 35.
I'm just looking at the handout here, it's not on this
Or,
handout?
no, it's in the details of the. 4 of 35. There, you should have a copy of this, Mayor, at your, you printed out the whole thing.
Okay.
It was at your seat. It's thick. It's got 36 pages in it.
What does it look like? Is this it?
So I think,
That's not it.
and I haven't had a long time to look at this because
Why don't I
I just
have
got
it?
it, but do you summarize here, if we were to raise those rates, what the revenue would be?
Where is it?
I can tell you
Like
what
a
it is.
total.
I can tell you what it is.
What would that be?
Let me do the I can do the,
Or maybe you can just come back with it in 2 weeks? Like the total that we would,
what's interesting, it's not a significant, on average, ignoring the past fiscal year, we had a lot of CUPs because
Right.
of the Stonegate. But typically, we average fewer than 10 CUPs and variances in a fiscal year. So if you take whatever the increase is going to be, the increase amount we're going to, if it's $1,000 more per CUP and variance, we're talking $20,000.
but we added on another CUP for the second story, right? So we've already added some
Yes.
fees to that.
Yes.
So that's all, I just want a
Yes.
number if it's,
We won't know how many of those there could be, though.
but an estimate, just, if I could just have totals, what the difference. I mean, if it's not gonna be a lot, why are we even doing it, is what I'm saying.
It was a conversation to try to reduce the transfer-ins
I know.
of the comment we received, Councilmember Damara, when those big $1 million transfers in on the bottom of the charts, trying to reduce that.
So,
What page are we on again? I'm sorry.
Page 4 of 35.
see, they're all,
See,
what's the title on it? Because the way ours is numbered,
It
it's
should
like.
say 4, it should say Planning and Zoning Subdivision Fees,
Oh.
4 of 35. Down
Ours
at the
doesn't
very,
say that.
very bottom.
ours is 4 of 4.
Yeah, it's.
No, 4 of 35.
I'm
There's
lost.
The top of it says Planning and Zoning Fees.
Thought I was there.
There we go. So it's 1 of 4. It says planning.
Is that in the agenda, or is that separate?
Yeah, see, we
You
have
have it
one
at
of,
your
we
seat.
have one of
Ours says 1
4,
of 4.
2,
Ours
yeah.
is just by section. So
Yes,
it's
this
planning
is-
and zoning fees.
It's a thick section that has 35 pages in it.
So what I'm trying to
It's
say,
page-
city manager, is that ours is not numbered. the
Like
same
yours
way.
are.
So so that's why I'm asking titles. It's planning and zoning fees, and then which one are you referring to on it?
It says at the top, conditional use permit,
Yep, got it. Okay.
See, our number
And then-
says 1 of 4. It
and then the
doesn't-
next one says variances.
Okay.
Those are the 2 fees. We're currently at less than 50%
Of
cost
recovery.
recovery on variances and CUPs.
Okay, so to get it to full recovery rate, what would these be? Did you calculate those?
It would be about double, because it's about 48%.
Oh, just for the standard?
For the standard CUP. It was a previous council direction to leave the minor CUPs inexpensive. And that's why they're at 33% versus 48% for the standard CUP.
Okay. All right.
And you're requesting direction tonight to?
Whether you would like 100% fee recovery, 75% fee recovery. I would like to mention that 2 years ago, the council did want to start getting, Councilmember Capocha, remember this, closer to 70%, and we actually increased it in fiscal year 13-14, but when we brought the fee schedule back for 14-15, it accidentally stayed at the 48%.
Oh, so there was intent to have it
It was
at
the
70%?
intent to have this be 70%. For the
So-
major, the standard zone, the standard CUP and the major variance.
But we really don't need to have a decision on this in order to do a budget for 15-16.
Well, we do, because you have to adopt our fees.
Okay.
The budget adoption includes our fee. We can't charge any fees July 1st if you haven't approved our fees.
Okay, well, real quick question. I mean, I wasn't part of that earlier conversation you talked about, or the earlier council. That was before my time here. And I'm a little concerned that if we start increasing prices on conditional use permits, things of this nature, that it's going to have an effect on people's willingness and ability to build or add to their house. And I think so we need to have some sense of just what that pricing effect will have. I don't have any clue about that. I mean, I know personally there's probably an amount where I probably would be deterred from building. And I suspect that that's why we have these subsidized rates, is because we decided in the past that we wanted to encourage people to be able to build onto their homes, correct?
Correct, and we don't know I couldn't tell you where that threshold is, where people aren't gonna do a room addition because if they have to get a variance or CUP. But if the council, this is just brought forward purely because there was so much discussion about those transfer in for the
Transfer.
planning department. If you're comfortable with those numbers, don't have to do anything this evening. We can always bring fees back 6 months from now. Next year, you can address them. You can leave fees exactly the way they are.
Well, I think thinking about it as a business process, and it looks like we have a recovery rate of 75% for most of them, and thinking about the work it takes in order to process something, we should be able to recover X amount. I mean, they do look like very steep numbers, but if we're just thinking about this is how much it costs to process this thing, we should be able to have a recovery rate that is pretty consistent. And it looks like, I mean, if my understanding it correctly though, City Manager, is that this is how much it would cost. You base the recovery rate on how much it costs to process that.
If it was at 100%, so let's lose the standard CUP, it's $2,900.
Right.
That's 48% recovery. So if we were to recover our full cost staff time.
Right, it's
to
staff time
process
is
it, it
what
would
I'm
be
trying to
2 times
establish.
that, so it'd be almost $4,000.
Right.
Would be
So-
100%. That's what it really costs us.
Right.
Is $4,000.
I was just trying to establish it is about staff time that's spent on that.
Yes, it
That
is.
job.
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
So if we're basing it on that, it costs our staff to do a job. We should be able to recover a certain amount so that we
Yeah.
don't keep doing those transfers in or out.
Well, the theory to me is that by not doing full cost recovery, what we're asking our taxpayers to do is to subsidize
The cost of
individuals here that want to do something to their home. And so my concern's a little different than yours, Mayor Pro Tem. You're concerned about discouraging people from building. I'm more concerned about having citizens subsidize people that want to build. I just don't see the point of that. I say if that's what it costs, that's what it costs, and you have a choice.
Well,
to
I
make.
don't disagree with the idea that there's a subsidy going on there, but, government does that all the time. They make a decision here. It's a zero-sum game. You do this over here, and this happens over here. And I would think that historically, it's been done for a reason. It's been done because we want to encourage people to build onto their homes or improve the look of their home or make their home safer or whatever. And I just don't know enough about this, and it's kind of we just haven't had a chance to really prepare adequately to vote on this, frankly. I mean, if I'm not in a big hurry to just raise rates on everybody to make money, is another way of putting it.
I look at it differently. We're not doing it to raise money. We're doing it to eliminate how much the taxpayers are subsidizing individual actions. So again, our thought before, just to clarify, is that we wanted to ramp these up and not hit everybody hard at one time with increasing them. And that's how we got them to 75%, except for these that are 48, because it was a mistake, we didn't change them.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna just propose, why don't we ratchet it up a little bit more to say 85% across the board, unless there are any specific ones that, so.
Everything, like minor conditional use permits?
Unless there are certain things that
They're
you
at
feel
33, you're
strong.
gonna move it up to 80?
I don't think we'd want to make that, so we could take those out and maybe make those 50%, the two minors, and bring everything else up to,
80%.
well, we've got one other major at 48%, so we might want to just tweak that so we don't, but it's a variance. How many variances have we even processed the last couple of years?
It's fewer than
Zero.
10 It's fewer than 10 a year.
I mean, the last couple of years, have we done any, I don't remember one variance being
Yeah,
before that
you-
council.
I think
planning
I think our actual count, ignoring Stonegate, last year was about 4. This fiscal year we're in right now.
4 variances. If you're asking for a variance, I mean, I just don't see why we wouldn't bring that up to the others. I'm sorry.
Well, I
So
think
so what is the dollar cost then if it goes up to 80% you're talking?
So,
It's,
yeah.
what, you're going up to 1,600, you're going up to what, $1,900?
I have to do the math.
5%, that would just
800?
roughly double it to $4,000. It would roughly
My
double it
goodness.
to, $6,000 for a
Bring it up
variance.
to what percent?
Bring it up to 85%.
Oh, I think that's a big jump.
I do too.
I mean, so we're raising everything else at 10%, and then we're gonna jump up those, so, I mean, maybe you could go across the board and
Take them all up 10%?
just take them up 10%.
Yeah, I could do that, I could support
Okay.
that.
So if I understand correctly, you're saying, Mayor, that you're looking at 85% for everything.
Except for these couple that are exceptions. If we do it this way, real simple, we're throwing out a proposal. Ratchet them all up 10% then.
Yeah, see what that looks like.
So in other words, I don't mean 10%, but I mean make 33%, turn it into 43%, make 48% into 58%, 75% becomes 85%.
Right.
I guess, so, Madam City Manager, which is the one that was not corrected in this fee schedule? Was the major variance?
It was just the major variances. It's the major variance and the standard CUP were the two.
Oh, neither one of them were changed. So they were
Neither one
supposed to
of
be
them.
70% last time.
75%.
70,
They were supposed to
70, 70 or 75%. I'm going,
Well, I'd say just push those up to 75%. That was what was intended last time, and if,
And why didn't they go up?
because when we brought this to the council to approve as part of the budget a year ago, we used the previous year's form and it was still at 48%. And that's what the council approved. Just a typo.
Oh.
But we couldn't increase them because it's what the council had approved.
yeah. So, yeah, I'd say put those up to 75% if we want to increase the others to 85% to have some kind of revenue coming in, and then 10% on the minor CUP, and then 10% additional on the minor variance, is what you proposed, right?
Okay, so the proposal is I know it's not a motion, but it's just a proposal, so minor would be 43%.
Standard at 75, just push it up to where it was.
Standard is 75. The major variance is 75, and all the others would become 85.
Well, the minor variance, I think, would be 43.
Right, the major
And
variance would
everything
be
else
75.
85%.
Yep.
If you
And
could just
everything
bring
else,
that back.
85.
85%.
See what it looks like.
Can you guys live with that?
Yeah.
Sure.
How about
Yeah.
you? Okay, I'm all for that too. I
And we
do,
can bring it back this way, and again, the council
You
can
can-
still change
yeah.
it next meeting if you'd like to.
I have a question. The fees for pool removal, where is that in here? Is there something Somebody brought that to my attention.
Pool removal? I do
One-
not recall a fee for pool.
A permit
It's
for-
probably just a demolition permit. I have to check with, I don't recall a fee for pool removal.
Okay. All right, well, I'll just put that aside, and let me ask the person that asked me about it.
You know, we don't have no, we do not have a fee for pool removal.
Okay.
It's probably some kind of demo permit or something like that.
Okay, my thinking on something like that was that might be something we want to subsidize to encourage somebody to get rid of their pool. So I'll bring it back when I, okay. If you
I
can
will
just,
find out what it
takes to
somebody needs
demolish a
to-
pool
to-
and fill it
right,
in.
I'll
Okay,
find
thank
out.
you. Okay, now you had some other suggestions here.
Yes, the next one I'd like you to give us direction on is allowing us to add a NPDS illicit discharge, it's not on your schedule
Yep.
now, an illicit discharge response fee of $213.
Okay, hold on just a second, that's on this piece of paper here.
Okay, is that 100% cost recovery?
It's estimated at, yes, 1.5 hours of staff time, which is our average amount of time
Okay.
it takes to respond to one of those. The second one is not an increase in the fee. We just would like to have a stated, it's a deposit against actual cost, and have a deposit of $1,420 for grading plan checks and $653 for grading inspection deposits. It is not an increase in the fee.
Yeah.
It just clarifies, so it simplifies. When somebody comes in, we can look at the fee schedule and say, that's your deposit, and we're not in this negotiation with them regarding how much their deposit should be.
Yeah, how did you come up with those two numbers?
Director Inman can explain how he came up with those two numbers.
Would you give them again, Elaine? 1,420?
It's on your sheet that looks like this.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
writing, so.
1,420
for grading fee, and what else?
and then 653 for grading inspection deposit.
Grading inspection, okay, thanks.
Okay,
The plan check fee was based on 10 hours of review time and discussions with applicants and so on.
mhm.
And the other was 10 hours also. No, excuse me, that was 4 hours, I believe.
And that's just historically,
Yeah,
generally
we
what they
just
were.
picked a rough average of what we spend per project.
And just a quick question, why do we even get a deposit instead of having them pay when,
It can be done either way, and historically, we've had them pay at the end of, once we know how much it's going to be. The difficulty with that is they don't, the person comes in and wants to know what their permits are gonna cost. And it's difficult for us to say up front. At least with the deposit, we can say, well, your initial deposit is going to be X.
and it's based on 10 hours,
Right.
and then when you've
Yeah.
only spent 9, you give them a refund.
When
right?
it comes in afterwards, when they get a bill for, let's say, 28 hours worth of plan check, then it becomes an argument and a lot of angry people. This way they're more aware up front that,
Yeah,
that there's a cost.
okay.
On the fee schedule, whenever you see, there's quite a few where it's actual cost,
Yeah, mhm.
and there's a deposit. Those fees are chosen to be done that way because the amount of time spent processing that type of application can really vary. So those are the ones that tend to be actual costs with a deposit. The ones that we have more control over and we have a better idea of how much time it's gonna take, those have a set fee. And if we end up spending more time, oh, too bad, and
Yeah.
it all averages out in the end.
Yeah. Okay, so are any of these, does anybody have any issue with them? Can we?
The NPDS or the grading, and then the next ones were.
Well, let's take them one at a time.
Okay.
I want to just
The
make sure.
illicit discharge response fee of $213.
Okay, any issues?
That's fine.
That's fine.
Okay,
That's something, a new cost we're facing, so.
right. Okay, deposits on the plan check and
The grading.
inspection?
And just one more time, why do we need to do this?
We already charge a fee for grading plan check. It's
Right.
based on the actual costs. Right now, there isn't a deposit. So either we argue with them regarding how much they need to deposit before we begin the work, and it's a haggle kind of situation, or we just wait till the very end, and then they're surprised with a big bill and they get upset. So this is purely for better customer service. They'll come in, they'll have an idea of what their permit's gonna be on the outset, and they will know if it comes in under, you get a refund. If it comes in over, you're gonna owe us additional money before we final it.
Just Just really quickly for clarification, at first I was thinking, why are we doing 100% recovery on that, and we don't recover 100% on really anything else? But now that I'm looking at it, it looks like we are getting 100% recovery on some public works
We do. The
subdivision,
planning is really the only department where the council tended not to do that.
Okay, and
Most
copies
of our
incurred.
fees are pretty close to 100%.
Okay.
Any place where you don't see a percentage indicated, we're at 100%.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so do we all agree that we want to do this? I'm in favor of it.
Yes, 100%, sure.
Sure.
Okay, police department, outside court subpoena fee is set by state. Recommendation is to remove the dollar amounts. Why did we even have dollar amounts to start with?
Because when we did the fee schedule, we put in the dollar amount at that point in time. So to make it easier, if the state changes theirs, we don't have a difference between the state and us. We used to just update it annually, and it's easier to just say it's based, because when the state changes, then our fees are off.
So then you just say refer to the state fees.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm fine with that. That's okay?
Yep.
Okay.
And then the next two are whether or not you want to increase our annual overnight parking permit fee or our parking citation fees.
We only charge we charge $1 right now.
I think it's
No, no.
$2. It's,
No, this is the annual overnight.
annual.
Oh, the
This is the
annual.
annual, it's $100 and something. It's $87.
It will be at the next meeting. We're just giving her direction and we'll approve it at the next meeting. You can tell us what
And it
you,
was on, it's not a Brown Act violation. It's on your agenda this evening to discuss and give me direction.
okay. You say they could be increased. What do you mean by they could be? I mean, we could charge whatever we want? Is that what you're saying, or?
No, annual overnight parking permit fees, let me go to the right page. You're not at full cost recovery for that one.
What
Let me
page
go to the
is
police
that?
department, I'm finding it.
and just to explain, for full cost recovery is the top that we can go as far as a fee.
Cannot charge more.
Right, so you cannot charge more than what the full cost is.
Correct. I know your pages aren't numbered the same as mine.
But that's okay, if you go by the
But we have
heading.
page 28 of 35, so it's towards the back.
These are.
Halfway, police fees?
department. Okay, that's after Public Works.
Yeah, got it.
What page do you have
2 of 2 of
of the police?
police. Nightly permit.
There's an overnight parking permit,
Notice,
yeah, it's $2 now and you're wanting to take it up to $3.
No. Well, that is just the CPI increase. Remember, all of the fees are being increased by the
Oh, I see
CPI
that.
increase. If you go to the very bottom, it says overnight parking permit fees, annual permit.
1 of 2.
It's $87 currently,
Yeah.
and because of the 0.5%,
1%?
88, we're at 1%.
1%?
Because of the
Because of the law enforcement cost to patrol for the overnight parking permits. There's a lot of staffing. It's a staff-intensive process.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'd like to know how many folks we have with overnight parking, if you could.
Chief knows.
Okay, well, there's
And I'm
3
also-
here.
And I'm also curious to know what maybe surrounding cities, because I don't know what people charge anymore.
How
We're on the
many?
low end. We're on the low end.
Okay, I would just want to make a point, is that even if we didn't allow overnight parking at all, we still would have a patrol vehicle, right? They just wouldn't stop and give tickets.
You'd have a patrol officer instead of a parking officer.
So okay, yeah, if you can come, just let's dig into this a little bit. So again, the patrol for this is 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., right?
2 to 5 a.m.
2 to 5. So you send a separate patrol car to
Right
get
now,
these
we have 2 parking control officers assigned to that. So there'd be no function for them out there.
And that's in addition to just a safety patrol?
That is in addition to the patrol officers. The uniformed patrol officers are out there.
Well, this is almost getting into more of a deeper philosophical argument about.
Like I said, we can leave this alone. I mean, it just,
I know, I think that's.
we could just leave it as is.
Leave it alone.
All right.
For right now.
For right now, we can leave it as is.
Okay.
The
I would
next one.
consider an increase, I'm just saying that, we paid for parking overnight for probably the first 6 years that we're here, but the 1% recovery rate is a little frightening to see, but if there is not a big move to change it, that's fine.
Before I change it, I would like to know what our surrounding cities are charging and.
Can you bring that back for us next time? Just give us a quick sample of what surrounding cities.
We will try, there's a lot of work just bringing the agenda back. We will try our best, but
All
in
right,
the
let's
meantime,
keep-
let's leave
we
it
can keep
alone.
that in the back
Leave it-
of our
leave it-
minds.
Leave it, we'll bring it back in the future.
Well, I mean, I'd be happy to do it. I can look on
Okay.
their website, so
Oh.
I'll find it.
Thank you. Okay.
But you can bring us back how many we have right now, how many overnight permits.
There's approximately 436. We know how many.
Thank you.
You know, if I can point out too, as we've discussed this problem with street sweeping, that the number of overnight parking has, no, that's not a problem. Street, that's a different problem. I'm sorry, that's a different problem. Okay, never mind. Okay, parking citations could be increased. Who wants to tackle that one? I'm not in favor of that. I think we need to do it as needed, and I would not want to create a, oh, you're saying that the amount, no, because this is a revenue thing for Sierra Madre, right? If we charge more on parking violations, we
Parking,
actually would bring in more revenue.
parking
Not much.
citations, more comes back to the city than the moving violations.
Yeah,
But
see,
still not all of
I-
it.
I really hate to make that a profit center in itself,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I just don't think that's the right thing to do. So what percentage of cost recovery are we on that? Parking?
Let me-
Yeah, but parking is,
That's, there's no,
yeah, because it goes, we get the money back, right? We only get the $8 back on a, or what do we get for parking? Does it go anywhere?
Typically, we get about $25 out of a $41 ticket.
Okay.
So,
I have the other city numbers if you'd want them tonight.
Good.
oh, that'd be great.
well, where are the fees on here? I'm
I'm
struggling
not
to
seeing them
find
either.
it.
Well, you're gonna do the overnight parking first?
No, we already,
No,
No,
he's
he has
telling us what the
information.
fees are for the
So
towns.
we don't need to do a survey. We don't need to bring it back to the next meeting, Mayor.
Yeah,
We
go
have the
ahead.
information.
I have them for you.
oh, you do, on the
Came
overnight
prepared.
parking?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Arcadia charges $84 at this time, Pasadena $71.20, South Pasadena $100, and San Marino $100. Those are at least our
We're in the
locals.
middle.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd leave it alone.
And if you want the cost of their normal parking citations, I can give it to you if you're just interested or if not interested.
Yeah, for parking,
$53 from Arcadia, $46.90 from Pasadena, $52 from San Marino, and $48 from South Pasadena. We're currently at 41.
That's where we're the lowest.
Stations.
so we're low.
Mhm.
$25.
I'm not really in favor of increasing that.
I'm not either.
Okay.
I'm okay keeping it the same.
Okay, how about you? You're okay, all right.
Okay.
Next one,
No,
overnight,
Brand new fee.
No,
Okay.
no?
I am not in favor of that.
Okay, tell me what you're thinking on that, why you wouldn't be?
I think the people that frequent the city parking lots are those that are frequenting some of our late-night places, and I don't want to have to encourage people to drive cars when they should not be driving
see.
No,
cars.
this would be just overnight, staying there all night, so it'd be those
Right, so
3 AM to 6
Point
AM.
well taken, she said, what
I think
she's
she's right
saying
about
is
that.
Oh,
that
I'm saying,
people
oh, I see.
park,
They leave their car there because they take a
they
taxi.
go to the Buccaneer,
Okay,
and they take
Okay.
their,
okay. I
and
understand.
the other thing is the canyon is another problem where people would have to pay for use
Well,
of
it's an
that.
alternative. If you don't
Okay,
want or can't afford the overnight on-street,
Yeah,
they
I
park in our city parking lots for free.
yeah, I don't
An
wanna do that.
alternative,
Yeah,
okay?
Okay,
The big one, last one is fire department response fee. It would be brand new dispatch fee.
this one I think we should consider. I know other cities do, I know Fountain Valley, I know specifically is $100 right off, you know.
Where are we?
Zero.
We don't have it. We don't have
You
one.
don't have a fee.
And why not?
Council's just not implemented one in the past.
We discussed it last year, I believe, and decided not to do it.
One of the reasons from last year's discussion, the council decided not to proceed is, we were unsure at the time, the Affordable Care Act and insurances. When you're transported in an ambulance, if it's for a valid medical reason, if you have insurance, it'll reimburse, it'll pay for that bill. This fee, we've since discovered, most insurance companies will not pay.
Medicare
Right.
doesn't cover it either.
So that was one of the things that this council discussed last time
Yeah.
and decided against it.
Yeah, you could have elderly people who
You could.
are fixed incomes.
We do have the, the subscription program, trying for a commercial for that, in which case you wouldn't pay for any transports or visits or.
A question about process. If fees can only be instituted once a year?
No.
Or, so.
You can do them at
Nick?
any time.
Okay.
You just have to
You know
schedule a public hearing.
So
I think we should probably do that as a separate agenda item. That's a big
I
deal.
think
I don't
that's
want to
more
make a snap
discussion
decision
and
on this.
not
yeah.
included in the fee schedule and something to discuss at a future time.
Okay? That's it on fees.
Okay,
And other than that, the fee schedule does include the 0.5% CPI increase for the past year. That's the few dollar increase you see in all the fees. So if staff is okay, if council's okay, we will include the CPI increase.
okay, it is now, okay, city manager, do you have sufficient direction to prepare a budget?
Yes, I do.
And then you'll be bringing that back in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Where we can have public comment.
Yes.
Okay, so in 2 weeks also, can we then discuss how we might want to do the subcommittees or whether we do them, or we'll just take up that discussion again?
We're
'cause
gonna
it's-
do them, right, you guys?
Well, no, I mean, we're not, it's
not-
just
not
10 after
deciding that
10. We
tonight.
don't need to decide today. It's getting late. I just don't want to, give you an opportunity to get some fresh thought over that, And we can also benefit from our other council member that's
Yeah.
not here, get his perspective on it, too.
We should just assign all of them tonight and assign him all 3 of them. huh?
That's
It
usually
will
the
teach
policy.
him.
Yeah, you don't miss council
That's
meetings.
right.
What staff, to clarify, what staff will bring back, it's sort of a little bit different process. What we'll bring back in 2 weeks is going to be it'll have the resolutions, very similar to what was on your consent calendar tonight to approve the current year. And then we need about a month to put the document together. So you're gonna approve a budget, you're gonna pass the resolutions, you know what the appropriations are by department, but the actual document will come back 2 weeks later,
Yeah,
for
okay.
transparency and public, just to, sort of like you receive and file the audit every year.
Yeah.
So you'll get back something that's gonna look very similar to what was on your consent calendar tonight, and then 2 more weeks later, we'll come back with the document.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, any new agenda items for the future?
Well, we can throw on that discussion of the fines at Verdugo.
Oh,
we just went-
the,
Sorry, fire, $72.
yeah. Okay,
Bring that back as a separate item.
as a separate item, and we'll decide when we want to put it on, but just throw it out there sometime in the future when we've got a little breathing room.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so if there's nothing else, can we get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are now adjourned.
10.
Okay, thank